dust to dust. Waiting for Mandela. My people, today I am free. I am free because you never forgot me. The day is coming when we will all be free. Free from hatred, free from fear, free from killing. You are young. You will live to see the day. And if I don't live to see the day, you better believe it. I'll be there. This is my home, and I'm home to stay. Freedom is coming tomorrow. Get ready, mama, prepare for your freedom. Get ready, mama, prepare for your freedom. Yeah, oh, you look good, mama. Yeah, oh, you look good, mama. Yeah, oh, you look good, mama. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining the conversation today. Uh, as we wait more people to come, I know 10 minutes to time. We have 10 minutes to go, but we've said that let us open it 20 minutes to time because many people usually miss mic to talk. But usually we're trying in our platform to make sure that everybody is on board and also everybody at least have something to say at the end of the day. Thank you so much again. You can share the space as we see what is happening. Welcome on board. Today we want to discuss the state of nation. The main agenda today is about environment and food security. We have seen so many laws that are being passed, and
so many things are being going forward. People are wondering what is happening today. We have so much, many expertise on environmental issues, and also the food itself. And this one, basically, we are talking about health, because without food, then our health is much so one thing. So that's the major focus. But we usually give some rules going forward. When you ask a mic, usually just mute your mic until we give you time to speak. Don't interrupt anybody when they're speaking. Number two, let us not attack anybody directly. Just we are based issue space. We are talking of issues that is happening in our country. We are talking of the things that is going on. We are not attacking an individual. We are talking about the issues that is happening there. So we don't like that. We don't go that way. No attacking anybody directly, or talking about somebody, but we are based issues space. Number three is that when you have something to say, we can write it down there. We can do it, and when we give you 2, 3, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, we say 3 minutes, a minute. So just follow that, because many people, and when you hear somebody has said what you want to say, also it is important to just give it a time. Now, let me see, Baraf, why? How are you doing, Baraf? How are you? All right. Okay, go ahead. I can see you open a mic. Baraf, Baraf, I can't hear you. Or something again to say is that you can use two languages. We have Swahili or English. So kama uko sawa na Kiswahili ni sawa, kama uko sawa na Kiingereza pia ni sawa. Lugha yote unaona ya kwamba unaweza tumia, sisi tunakubali. Kwa hivyo we are not using only English, but also tunatumia Kiswahili. Kama unaweza tumia Kiswahili, hiyo ni sawa. All right, Dr. Maju, good evening. How are you doing today?
Good evening, Larry. How are you?
I'm good, bro. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. You are lost.
uh,
That's,
yeah, now.
you have said what I wanted to say. So for that reason, let me go quiet and I come back late.
What do you say? What are you planning that I've said?
Yeah.
What
Now
I've
I've heard
what?
you saying, I've heard you saying there that kama mtu amesema kitu ulikuwa unataka kusema, just calm and you will come up again. So yeah. I wanted to greet people and you have already greeted people.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
I'm here, bro. I'm here.
Thank you so much, Daktari. We appreciate your time and presence all the time. Yeah, yeah. No
Thank
worries.
you.
No.
Thank you for the topic. It's a very healthy one, and we
Yeah,
hope to see some healthy contribution towards this agenda of today. Thank you.
I hear you, bro. I hear you. Abdi, how are you doing? Good evening. How are you? Good afternoon. Mhm.
Thank you. Good. I'm doing good, Hillary.
Yes. How are you today?
Good to hear. I'll also be reading the question and comments afterwards. For those who can't hear, who can also not speak, they can put their questions and comments as we look at what the bottom economic approach on environment has been achieved. I think. Thank you.
Yeah. That's basically what we're going to talk about. Esther Mudui, Esther Mudui, how are you doing?
I am fine, thank you. How about you?
I'm well. I'm well. Happy to see you.
Happy to. I'm glad that you're here once again
Right.
and you're hosting us. We appreciate, we really appreciate.
Yeah, I'm also happy that you're here and to give your views on the topic today.
Um, Asante sana, Hilary, for this opportunity that you've been offering for us. What I understand by the state of the nation and especially for food, I would say it's really funny and at the same time sorry for that. it's really funny, and at the same time, we are crying because what we can see is really affecting everyone, and especially the poor community. And I think I'm in that community of poor community. What do I mean? This is what I mean. I might afford to buy my food, but if my mother, if my father, if my grandma, if my grandpa, or those who are surrounding me as neighbors, they do not have food, then it becomes a state of worry. And what I mean by this is because we have a challenge with taxation of our own food. Bread has hit a higher price. A lot is ongoing. Let me talk of even the bill that is being brought on Ndengu from Kamba Nation. I'm a Kamba Nation, and I know the importance of Ndengu. I mean, where are we heading as a country? This is just to say there's insecurity with area to do with food in these areas of maybe Kamba Nation, because if Ndengu becomes a way, if you plant it, you have to pay for tax or you have to have a license, then Kamba Nation is doomed. And I've said I might have food, but if my society or the people surrounding me, they do not have food, then I do not have food. That is just like I'm going nowhere. So that's what I would put as my submissions for now on food security.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Linda, I see you. Linda, how are you doing?
Hi, good afternoon. Can you
Good.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay, I'm glad I can talk now from my laptop. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Linda Stewart of Motomoto Kitchen from Delaware. I guess my views on the environment and food security is I always like going back to the basics where we have to start embracing our cultural values. So the moment we stop and deviate from the West, then, it will make our lives easier.
I hear you. I hear you. Abdi, before I welcome Mwangi, I think Mwangi Boni Mwangi will greet us, and I invited him to come here. Abdi, you want to give open remarks?
Yes, I will. I will give an opening remarks. Welcome, Mwangi, Bonnie. Hello, everyone, and thank you. Welcome to Pressure Point. I just want to. We want to hear, as Hillary said, your comments, your thoughts on this topic. It's two prongs actually. One is environmental, and another aspect is food security. So let me just guide a little bit this conversation. On a paper, I would say the KK government has put forward a very comprehensive and ambitious plan to address Kenya environmental challenges. This is like, I will give an example, it's like the goal of planting almost 15 billion trees, transitioning to renewable energy, improving waste management. These are indeed commendable, and it aligns well with the best global practice of sustainable development in terms of these ambitious plans. However, the reality on the ground tells a different story. While the plans are clear, the implementation has been inconsistent, in some cases completely contradictory to the stated goals. Let me highlight a few areas where these gaps between policy and practice is more evident. Like this is the afforestation, this is like the planting of trees by 2032, 15 billion trees. Like now, I think Bonnie will give us, if he has time, will also tell us, like there's 140 million that was spent on this tree planting process that is not even there. The money is not even accounted for from the Auditor General report. Okay, there is alarming low lack of follow-up. Reports from various regions indicate that the survival rates of these trees are alarmingly low. So all this has been there. And there is an issue of climate change. There is an issue of pollution and waste management control. There is a community involvement. Actually, there is a court ruling on community participation on this. All this has not happened. From food perspective, I would like us to look at the GMO, the various bills that are passed, and how they impact our food security and the local community. Having said that, I yield the mic while the speakers come in and give us an update on these views. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdi, for that. And I know, thank you for giving that bottom line on what is happening and the money that we are losing. We're going to talk a lot of things because when we talk about environment, food security, we saw that even there was some dams that were being in the last regime, and also I think even the current regime, because being that the current president was talking about, he was the one who's implementing these projects and everything, and we don't know what, and these could have helped the community to even have these dams so that they can have food, we can do irrigation and everything. And also we are seeing so many things, so many laws are coming in, like the nuts laws. I don't know whether you've read it, but I know many people have read it, and we're going to talk about these things. We are seeing so many laws are coming up on food. You cannot plant some seeds unless it is approved. What is happening? So it means that we are losing our originality, or the original, because we see, you go to the villages, you realize that even some maize, when people want to plant maize, they use old, some who cannot buy the seeds, they're using those one, they preserve those maize for a while, and then they use them as seeds to plant. But so it seems that by all these laws is coming in, it means that those things cannot happen. When you use that seed, it is gone until another seed. If it is not approved, then we'll not have to plant those seeds in our land. What is happening? These are things that we want to discuss this afternoon, this morning, no matter the time that you are in. Dr. Nyango, before I welcome Bonnie, Dr. Nyango, how are you? How are you doing, Sari?
I'm doing well, Hillary. How are you?
I'm well, bro.
Good. Glad to be on board once again to be able to look at the issue of environment and food security. And I appreciate what the people here have already said before me. I'm glad to see Bonnie on the speaker panel. He's passionate about these and many other subjects on matters affecting our country. I don't know what you would want me to say for now. Maybe just some opening remarks on the subject.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So as it has been pointed out by one of the speakers earlier, we are in a country where we don't have a shortage of laws and policies. Actually, since 1999, when the Environmental Management and Coordination Act came into force, it's a very comprehensive law, very comprehensively providing the institutional and legal framework for environmental management in the country. And we have the noise and excessive vibration pollution control regulations of 2008, and now a lot has come on climate change and everything. So we have very many policies. We even have, I think, the Kenya environmental policy, and many international treaties that Kenya is part of. So globally, from a global point of view, even the current president has presented himself as somebody who is very strong in matters environment. But unfortunately, as the Gen Z say, upper kwa ground, I think our environmental management remains very poor. One of the teething problems that we're still struggling with is even in solid waste management, even in this city. I was just having my usual evening run, and the kind of garbage that you come across on the streets, you even wonder where we have policies and frameworks for managing such things. So we still have a great gap between implementation and policies. Unfortunately, we are passing many more. And the laws that are coming in now, especially the ones you mentioned that are touching on agriculture. And I was this morning doing a lot of research on the background and the history of these legislations concerning plant varieties and seeds. Yeah, and I realized that there has been a dedicated attempt to what they are saying to patent crops and crop varieties since around 1930 in the US. But people now tried to say that you can actually invent a crop. Before that, crops were naturally occurring things, and you could be able to grow, indigenous seeds, grow and regrow. But it reached a time when people went into this scientifically, and people went and started doing what they call, you can invent a crop and actually claim intellectual property rights to it, so that we need to borrow intellectual property rights from you to be able to grow your variety of crops. And that was did not kick off. It did not pick up for a very long time until sometimes in the 1990s, when now a lot of interest was revisited in that area. And that is where now we are seeing people coming up into the crop and crop varieties bill that literally tends to tell you that somebody, the variety of crops that you grow can be traced to someone's intellectual property rights. So you don't have the right to grow. You can buy seeds, yes, you grow once, but you don't have the right. If you grow it again, it's like you'll be if you regrow your own seeds, you'll be like in academia we say plagiarizing because it's intellectual property rights that belong to somebody else. So we are seeing now that efforts coming into Kenya through those bills, the nuts and oils and all that, so that the danger is what people have called the seed sovereignty, being able to do the indigenous seeds and share them. And we also run the risk of, if we were to depend fully on seeds that are coming from elsewhere, we don't know what the motive behind this. So even the issue of GMOs, that has been a controversial subject, can easily just go through, because you don't know what seeds you're consuming, you don't know why we're consuming them, and all that. So I think there are issues that we really need to look into. But beyond that, our food security situation is still dire.
Larry,
Yeah. So thank you.
are you people there? I can't hear
Dr. is
anything.
talking, Dr. Maju.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you can talk then.
Okay. I'll wait. I can hear you, but let me wait for if I will hear another speaker.
All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Daktari.
Thank you. So I was just concluding that let's look into these issues. What I know, they've been talked about here and there, but we are doing this to raise awareness, and ultimately these conversations need to reach the common mwananchi who does not know about things. Hillary mentioned mega projects that we've had. From an engineering point of view, we've had mega dams that were meant to be able to work towards food security. Most of them have stalled. I still long. I think we need to send Morara Kebaso to Galana Kulalu to update us of what happened to that brilliant project that Uhuru's regime came with. If it was implemented to the right as was planned, I think Kenya would now be far away in terms of food security. So those are some of the issues that we really need to look into now that Kenyans are awakened to issues happening in our country. We don't want to stay on the side like outsiders and just watch. We need to be part of everything that happens, every development project, every legislation that goes through parliament. We need to be sure. Now they are talking about FLOCA, financing locally led climate action. And I know a lot of money is going into the counties on a program called FLOCA, Financing Locally Led Climate Action, Mashinani, and there's a lot of money that is coming from out of the country to go and finance climate action in the counties. If there's an expert here, we should be able to hear what that program is all about and whether it has had impact in the counties. So thank you very much, Hillary. I think that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you so much, Dr. I appreciate your presence and also your views on what has been happening and the corruption. I want to welcome Bonnie. Bonnie Mwangi, my friend, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Can you guys hear me?
Very well, bro.
Awesome.
Yeah, well,
thank you.
God, and thank you for coming, and also What do you think? I've seen what you wrote, and in conjunction with this, but also that one is very very key in our topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so I mean, let me introduce myself first. For those who don't know me, my name is Boni Mwangi. I'm a US-based Kenyan economist and certified public accountant. My passion really lies in making sure that we have good, responsible governance, making sure we have people that understand what it means to be in public service, all right? And so dedicated myself over the last couple of months to essentially holding our leaders accountable, because I feel like the gap that we have right now in our country is that our leaders know that the public doesn't pay attention to a lot of these things. If you really look at where we are right now as a country and where we've been over the last 10 years, it's sad that we are where we are, but our media is not doing the job that it needs to do. Our institutions are not doing their jobs. Our parliament is not doing its job. And so, you and I, we have to step up, and that's what I'm doing. If you think about, I don't know if a lot of people understand where we are as a country from a fiscal standpoint, right? Our country over the last 10 years has taken about 9 trillion shillings in debt. So if you think about what this means, since independence, until 2013, our country never had more than 2 trillion in debt. For 50 years, never had more than 2 trillion in debt. You remember the Kibaki years, right? We saw a lot of development in our country. If you ask most people whether they felt the development, they felt it. I mean, incomes were going up, standards of living were going up, people were seeing highways and other infrastructure. Think about what happened since 2013 to now, right? Our national debt has gone up by 450%. During the same time, if you look at our growth as a country, it's a fraction of that, 4.5% in 10 years on average. So our debt is going up by 4 times the level of growth that we are seeing. So then the question is, what's happening with this money, right? What is happening? And when you really start looking at what's happening with the money is when it makes sense where we are, right? So today, our government, every shilling that it collects, it has to put aside 60 cents just to cover interest. You think about what that means. If you had an income where you get paid 100,000 at the end of the month and you have to put aside 60,000 just to pay interest, imagine the chaos you're going to have in that house. You will never be able to pay your mortgage or rent. You're not going to be able to send your kids to school. You would never have anything saved for retirement, right? The same concept applies for our country. If you're spending 60% of our money to pay interest, when are you going to be able to pay your civil servants? When are you going to be able to pay teachers? When are you going to be able to invest in R&D and things that are going to be necessary to make our country competitive, right? And so when I look at how we spend this 9 trillion, it's really the saddest thing. You're seeing projects right now. The government is saying, you look at one country, for example, you see a project that has costed 11 billion. Remember, this is not money that we have because over the last 10 years or so, we've never had a balanced budget. Everything that, if you hear the government saying that we're going to invest in a project in your country, it's not done it's not money that we have. They are going to go and borrow that money. So you think of, I take, let's say, one county that has 11 billion worth of projects that were started in 2017. We owe that 11 billion. We are paying interest on it. And it's not getting completed in most cases. These contracts are awarded to cronies of politicians. They go in, they either walk away with 100% of the process and don't do a damn thing, or when they do work, when you look at the quality of what's being done, it's just shameful. And so I feel like we have to do our job in providing civic education, making sure that our people understand that politicians' job is not just to show up around election with cameras in tow, showing how they are distributing, uh, sanitary, pads and water and stuff like that. Our leaders' job is to make sure they are serving the Kenyan people by being good stewards of our resources, and that's not happening. Just think about this. Every one of the data points that I use in my analysis is public information. Your parliament has that information. The executive branch has that information. The media has that information. The EACC has that information, and there's no interest. Nobody is looking at that, right? You see these numbers that I post, and they're all backed by evidence. You've never seen anybody dispute that because they know that those those numbers are true. And what happened, as I report, is true. Nobody's doing anything about it. So we citizens have to step up, and that's what I'm trying to do. I feel like we can have as many elections as we want, but if people do not understand how politicians are behaving with their money, how their money is being used, and the situation that we're in. If people don't appreciate that, then we're always going to have these kind of issues that we have. So I want to urge all of you to look at yourself and ask you, based on your expertise, your experience, where can you add value, right? What can you do to make sure that we save our country from this predicament that we have right now? And again, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Bonnie Mwangi, and we really appreciate your time. And also, I think we talked, and also we're going to talk more details about all these debts, because those are the things that I know is affecting our country at the moment. And I know with your expertise and with your experience, I know you'll give more details on this. You have tried to give it. And when you follow Mon Mwangi, check his what he posted, and you'll see how things are happening. You'll see his details on the debts that even Wanjigi was talking about. I want to welcome Ruby, and Ruby to introduce herself, because she's one of the people who's very, very passionate about environmental, and that one is, I know, is our area of expertise. And let her give us her views on the same, and also this topic. And Ruby, your open remarks, and also you can just chime in and give more details about the topic of the day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hillary. Yeah, definitely. This is hi to everybody. Thank you so much for coming to the space. I think one of the biggest issue, honestly, is food, and definitely that. And uh, everything is so interconnected that if we zero in into one, we're gonna see how they're all related and interconnected. So, just to introduce myself, my name is Ruby. I'm a mom. I'm a passionate foodie. I have master's in environment and management. And it's something that I don't know if it was worth it, because for me, I've found out that basically environmental global warming issue is very corny, and it's something that's definitely meant to rob developing countries, and that being Africa also. So, in best to what's happening in Kenya right now, um, I think one thing that we have to look at, I questioned myself, how did we get here? All of a sudden you see that houses are being demolished, the seed law, the livestock law, and I was like, did our president just wake up and just started making these rules? And so when I dig deep, I found out that, you know what, it's all connected. The root comes to this environment, global warming, environment, and sustainability. So if you see that everything is written environment and sustainability is a very vague thing. And people just always assume that sustainability should be a good thing and therefore should be accepted. And if you look at most of the documents that even when the president is speaking, he talks about environmental sustainability or global warming. So based on what I looked at, I mean, global warming issue, it started with the Kyoto Protocol that was in Japan. And through that, it was introduced that countries should basically live below their means in terms of polluting the environment. And and therefore, the developing world was being told, like, how are we going to not pollute at the same time maintain the living standards that we have. So they came up with something called the carbon credits that you guys all know about. That's actually almost taking over Africa right now, because it's very twisted, and it does not really serve the developing countries in my perspective. So in details, when I started looking at how we got here, I went into dig deep, and I found out actually when the president was campaigning, he was campaigning on something called the bottom up approach. And in this bottom up approach, he came up with it's all online. And as Boniface was talking about, is like we have to really focus on, let's look at the details. Sometimes it's just easy. Somebody once said that if you want to hide information, hide it in the box, because people don't really like to read. So I was like, okay, this is where we go. So there's something he came up with called the Agricultural, Rural and Urban Development Sector Report. And this is a Kenya Vision 2030. And in this Vision 2030, he came up with something called the bottom-up approach. And if you look at the document, it's about like 100 and something document that he states everything. And if you look at this document, and I started like going line by line, and you look at everything that the president is doing, it's in this document. For example, the livestock law, it states that it covers like five issues that it's really passionate about. It's this is land and livestock and blue economy and fisheries, agriculture, and then land sector. So in this document, the bottom-up approach, it calls it BEADER, I think, a bottom-up development something. It basically states that it needs more land in order to able to meet the Kyoto Protocol, or the sustainability development, as they call it, of the world. And what is that? What does that mean? Yeah, it says that sustainable development goals. And to meet these sustainable development goals, according to the president, what it is trying to do is trying to zero in on the agriculture. And what does that mean? It means that allocating more land for the agriculture, and also patenting, or rather giving this land to be farmed to private sector. When you talk about and that's where you see things like now the seed law is coming in, and the livestock law, because you talk like in this document, literally everything is going to be regulated. It comes to textile as well. As you guys know, the president also was talking about giving people seeds to plant cotton. So cotton, based on like you want to do some kind of textile industry and stuff. If you read the document, it's really good on paper, but it's not really does not make sense if you go to the ground, because this is an economy where there's no jobs, and some people live on the land. Literally, where I come from, I have a lot of our neighbors that or in the community that literally depend on the land. They don't have anybody from overseas sending them money, or another person working that they depend on. They depend on the land, like literally to eat, to farm, to get mahindi and all that stuff. Like I would say maybe 80% of whatever they depend on. And so one thing that I noticed that was really intriguing to me is, if you look at this document, you find out that the president is actually talking about something, the land law, which people are going to be moved. Like, it's talking about disintegrating something called the colonial village. What is colonial village? Colonial village are the Ushago in our homes. And those Ushago people are going to be relocated. And that's why you see is very active into this housing projects. So people are going to be moved from the Oshago houses into some high rise, or I don't know where, into some gorofas somewhere. And I think, and I talked to, I used to, I talk, I think there's a time I had a conversation with a friend of mine from Ethiopia, and I think they did something like that in Ethiopia. And she told me that it was terrible, because you find like a grandma being moved into an 8th floor. There's no window. I mean, there's window. There's no balcony. There's no elevator. They can't even go from up to down. This thing, if you go through it, it's good on paper. But if you look at it, it does not serve it. It cannot be implemented in a country like Kenya. So when it comes to seeds, he's talking about partnering with the private sector. And who are those private sector people? They're of course the Bill Gates and the rest, who are now regulating the seeds and stuff like that. So they are trying to move people away from being depending on the land, to being moved in the end to completely depend on the government, or I don't know, depend on how are people going to eat. You're literally going to depend on the government to give you food to eat. And And everything is so connected, and that's where you see they're so pushing so much on the Huduma number. These are the things that you will use in order to get some handout from the government. And literally, the government can decide to not give you food eventually, and that's going to be a disaster. Also, if you look at this document, you find something, or a livestock regulation industry. As you guys know, that in Holland, they actually ended up killing all the cows, literally, because they believe that the cow poop or whatever is something that is contributing to global warming. Well, you can do that in developing world, and or we are moving from like literally cows to food made in the lab, where now if you go to some places in Europe, they find like salmon is being lab made, beef is being lab made, and chicken like that. So it is something, and they think that this is, or they advocate that this is something that's going to be benefit their global warming, when in reality it's just benefiting their few corporations. Also, I was looking at the all edible oils, and in this document, I will post it. I will post the link on my page, if anybody is interested, or anybody has not had a hand on it. I myself, I haven't seen people really talking about it, and it's something that disturbs me, because everything that the president was talking about during his campaign, this is the bottom up. And if you this bottom up is not, it makes sense on paper, and it's so superficial on paper, but on the ground you cannot implement it. And when we look at the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations, Sustainable Development Goals is so superficial, because they are talking about where the poverty is being eradicated, hunger is being eradicated completely, education is being promoted, peace and human rights. Like, when you look at that document and you read it, you just look, it is so how can I say it? It's like paradise, which is like, the reality of it is kind of, somebody would doubt, like, how is this even possible? And if they were serious about it, can they do something about the Maasai in Tanzania, for example? The Maasai in Tanzania being moved out of their land. Like, what about their rights? So the UN sometimes is something corporation use to kind of gain whatever they want to, and it's very biased. There's no way that the sustainable development goal is going to be achieved in a place like Kenya. And with these policies, okay, if you're moving people out of their land, what are you giving them jobs? There are no jobs, and yet you see houses being demolished. And in this document, it states that people are going to be compensated and something like that. It's even in Kenya, it's tough based on the corruption that's going on, who is being compensated, tribalism. We're gonna, people are just gonna decide, like, okay, you know what, your land is sitting on, we want to take your land. And you will have no say. And this one says mandatory evacuation. If you look at this document from the Kenya Kwanza, it's called the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, or Kenya Kwanza Sustainable Development Goals. It is a sham. So, I mean, I will add more into that if anybody want to add into whatever document that they've read, or their perspective on this, and then I can maybe chip in later. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ruby, for giving us that details. It is so funny. And today you open many people's eyes here, because I think many people have gone through that document, but they don't look at the way you are looking at it. And amazingly, you're saying that people will be chased from their lands. What are they doing with this land? And also, this policy, the documents look so nice, but in deeply, it is not what we are reading and what we are seeing. You'll post that, and you'll share with that. Then we'll share with the people, and also when you post it in your timeline, we're gonna share it more so that many people can open that. But there's something that you've said. What do you think? Before I see Linda is raising her hand.
Okay.
Okay, Abdi. Ruby, what do you think that when KK is trying to implement this thing, what you in your future, or when you look at this document, you see that now a time is coming that people will be, when there's any free land that is not being used, it means that the government is going to take it. Is that the plan?
Well, according to this document, it's not even like if you're not using the land. Even if you're using the land, they just feel like what you're using the land is not going to serve the food sustainability they're talking about. They can just come up and say, you know what, that land in your home or even in your village, we want to take it. And therefore, this is your compensation. And there you go. Like, we're going to take it, whether you're using that land or not. If it sits on a property or on a fertile or place where they feel like a corporation wants to take over and do whatever they want to do with it, then they will take it. Like, it doesn't state that if you're not using the land. They just decide that, okay, this is the land we want to take, and they'll take it. And people will basically have no say. And if you notice, the president even went to Kisii last weekend, and he was talking about building houses in the Kisii area. If you know, Kisii has fertile land. In Kisii, I lived in Kisii, and I was amazed with the amount of food and how fertile the land is. And he was talking about building houses in Kisii, and that means that he will eventually move people from their land to go to these houses. And in my thinking, I'm thinking, like, how is this even possible? And if the president is really open to whatever that he's doing, how come he's not giving the media or promoting the civic education based on this document to really educate people and come out open? It is going really vague, and people are really not understanding what's going on in terms of, because this document also talk about the housing settlement. Basically, they move you, they're gonna break up your house, and then they're gonna build the housing project that they want to build. Yeah. I hope I answered your question,
Wow.
Hillary.
Wow. I've never looked at.
I'll add.
Yes, Abdi. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Ruby, you're right. Also, earlier we talked about this bottom economic approach in regards to environment, where I think the government has really had committed to international stage, as evidenced by the recent participation of even the cabinet secretary on opening session on African groups of opening session of the African Group of Climate CPO 29. All these actions are part of their broader efforts to position Kenya as a leader in in climate action and sustainable development. However, as you said, when you look at their model, these are promising plans and engagement, but actual implementation of these plans are never there. While commitments are outlined in better bottom up, but on the ground it tells a different story. So I think that, you're right. There is a growing disconnect between the administration environmental rhetoric and tangible outcome, which is common in government, and there's a lot of PR in regards to this, I think.
Wow. Linda, I saw your hand, and I want.
And I would like to make it clear also that we invited the cabinet secretary. Maybe he's new, also transitioning to his position, but hopefully he will attend to respond to some of the queries that is being raised in this forum too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdi, for that. Yeah. Linda, your hand was up. I don't know if you have a question or
Yeah,
something.
I just wanted to make a comment about Ruby's document. First and foremost, I just think that most of these blueprints that the government has, all these 150, 300-page documents, is ridiculous, because I feel like every time we tend to repeat the same kind of plan, but it's never implemented. So if the government can come up with a shorter document, that would be good for the public to also translate and be involved. Now, about the land that is being used and people being kicked out of their respective properties, this is something that I had long time ago, even before our current president. And I got to hear that 411 from here in America. So most of the times you'll find that America controls the world. And if we understand the dynamics, just like Ruby said, that we are interconnected, then we'll be able to know kind of where to tap into and to bring change. Given that Kenya is the conveyor belt for Africa, you'll find that all these European nations are always looking to come into Kenya. So for me, I can say that we need to take our power back and kind of protect everything. The moment we protect ourselves from the foreign investors and the corporations, then we'll start regaining and picking up from where we are. But as of now, it seems like there's a scramble for Kenya because Kenya is the one that controls all this trade and investments and all that stuff. I don't want to go into deep details when it comes to that. But for me, I'm all for going back to the basics where we protect our land and see where we can start from. And then, keep it simple and basic. I say that from a farmer who's operating both in Kenya and in America.
Right. Thank you so much, Linda. Yeah. Thank you for that, for
Larry, I
informing
have
us
a
that.
question.
And also, Ruby said something that was very key in this conversation as we go forward. To have the food security, the environment should be a place where it is so accommodative to the farmers and everything. But you see, she mentioned something also on the. If we check the Denmark, she was saying that all the lands, all the cows were just killed because of the same this document, the kind of the document that KK was pushing forward on food security and environment issues and everything. So these are the things that we want to see how this thing is going to affect us on the food security. It means that with the time you will not have control even over land, or you will not have a control on your land yourself. Bonnie, do you have something to come in before I give it to Dr. Maju?
Give me a second. Come back to me.
All right.
Just give
Dr.
me a bit.
Maju, go and then Spencer.
Mine was just a question to Robbie about the document. I myself have
Daktari, I
not
can't hear you.
get time.
Mnamsikia Abdi, unasikia Dr. Maju?
I can hear him. Yes, I
Oh,
can hear.
alikuwa na
Yeah,
issues za
You
zile.
I
you
So,
can
can
I
hear
can
me?
hear you, Dr. Magi.
okay, let him
Th-
go ahead then. You
Thank
let me
you.
know when he's done.
Thank you, Ruby. I was asking about the document. You have mentioned that in some of the time the lands will be taken away, then you are being compensated. What does they state? You compensated to where? Where do you go? Do you migrate from your country, or what happened? And which type of land will they be coming for to compensate? And specifically, which area? I would like to know that part so that I understand it better before I forge ahead with my own contribution.
Well, in the document, it says that literally, I'm going to read it for you. It said, facilitate compulsory land acquisition for 70% infrastructure for infrastructure development and for agriculture. So basically, I don't think that is why the president is really pushing on this affordable housing thing, because I believe what he's trying to do is when you are taken out of your land in Shago, you are being moved into this affordable housing. But again, what we have seen, it's not working because, for example, when the people's houses were being demolished in Nairobi, some people bought those houses, took loan and built those houses. And when all of a sudden they woke up and their houses, no, they were not consulted, they were not coached, they were not counseled on how are they being allocated. They just woke up and they're told, you know what, we're going to be demolishing your house next week or on Friday. What did those people do? Most of them went to Shago. Most of them were like, you know what, I have nothing else left with me. I'm moving to the village. I saw this young man actually who was crying. He said, "My dad bought this land and took a loan to build this land." And all of a sudden, he woke up and he said, "My dad packed his stuff and went to the village." So imagine you're going to the village, and later on, they coming in that village where you have moved, and then they're trying to take you out of that land again. I mean, it's going to be chaotic because, as we know, this thing can work. I don't even think if it can work. We have to know that we have different culture from the American culture or from the Western culture. We are trying to westernize our culture, is not going to be a smooth road. Most of our villages, we attach to those villages. It is our form of identity. It is our form of community spirit that we connect with each other. And also we have our loved ones, like in Kenya, we bury our loved ones in the village. So imagine just like leaving and then everything is being bulldozed. It's going to be chaotic, and they're moving you in a high rise somewhere. We cannot operate as as Western culture, and I think that is something that maybe this document does not talk about the culture. It's very capitalist. I would say also very socialist. I mean, if this thing is going to be implemented, we might as well assume that we are in North Korea, where where just the government is going to take everything, and it's just going to be communism, and you know what, move into the high rise, and that's it. But we cannot adopt. And one thing again, you have to. I mean, Linda was mentioning about like America. America is losing, the Western world is losing their land, like the agricultural land, not because they're losing it. It's so deteriorated, using pesticide and using so much. Their land is so deteriorated. They know that in the next 30 to 50, not even 30 to 50 years to 60 years, they will not be able to use that land because they've been using GMO and all these chemicals into the land. The land is dead. Like not even organism can grow into the land. And we need this worms and stuff to actually build the land. And that is the organic land we have in Africa. So they are looking into how are they going to feed our people to feed their people in the Western world. They're looking for, Africa has the perfect environment. We have water, we have, our soil is so rich, and their eyes are on that. And how are they coming in? They're coming into this global warming as sustainable development. Sustainable development, it is so superficial. It doesn't fit. Like you cannot. It's like living. If you read a sustainable document project or agenda, it is so superficial. It's like living in heaven, where everything is the same and everybody is the same. Well, I don't know how that's gonna work. I hope I answered your question, Abdi. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. Larry, she was answering me, and I'm well with it. I'll come up again. I hope you will give me time.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you update? Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So that was a good presentation from her. But I have a few follow up questions actually. And my follow up question to that for Ruby, you can, you uh,
Abdi umepotea. I can't hear you. Ruby, can you hear Abdi?
No, I lost. I think we
All right.
lost him.
Abdi, Bonnie, as you come in, I know Dr. Onyango is really coming in. But Bonnie, as you come in, you have heard what Ruby is saying, and also when you give your open remarks, you are talking about the debts. What is happening in the
Hmm.
country, the debts, and it's so amazingly, and so, and we don't know
Right.
when we'll finish paying all this debt. And what Ruby is talking about, the environment and what is happening, how they want to try to connect this thing to westernize and everything. How does this thing connect? And how all these things going to affect us, because we are seeing the people who are giving us all this debt, just these Westerns and these people. As you come in,
Yeah.
and I know that is your area, that's why.
I think I was
I
lost, right?
Yeah, Abdi, you lost. Wait, Bonnie come in, then you'll say what you're saying with your following question. Bonnie, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. I think the first thing I want everybody to understand is that we are not in a position where we can spend any money on development. We just don't have that money. Right? I just told you that our country right now owes almost $11 trillion shillings in debt. For every shilling that Kenya gets right now in terms of tax revenue, 60% is going to pay interest. So we don't have, if you look at our budget, every year we are going into debt. Can you hear me?
I can hear Bonnie. Go ahead.
Yeah, very well.
Okay, good. Every single year we spend more money than we make, right? So this year, even with the tax with the changes that the government's proposed to reduce expenditure, we are still going to incur almost $1 trillion shillings in debt. So how can you have that kind of? We're already sitting on 11 trillion in debt, and we're going to borrow another almost trillion this year. How can you talk about building houses when you don't have enough money to even pay your bills? We are talking about not having enough money to pay for doctors in hospitals. We don't have enough money to pay teachers. We don't have money to even support our own national security, right? But our government is sort of bent on looking busy while it's doing nothing, right? They want to go around the country, announcing these projects when they're not really doing anything. And every time these projects are announced, right, trust me, having looked at all this, how our government has been spending our money over the last 10 years or so, I'm telling you, every single project that's announced is essentially a way for the government to steal your money, because I have not seen one project that made sense when I look at where these projects are being built. You look at stadiums that are being built in the middle of nowhere, right? We go, then we spend 300 million. Then you have 5 or 10 schools in a kilometer or two from that location that are dilapidated, right? But the government is making decisions based on, this. They're looking at this and saying, where can we make money? We gotta go and build a stadium in a place where they are not. We don't even have people. I've had a project where we spent like 600 million, and then the people say nobody asked us if we need this, right? And some of these projects are actually commissioned, right? We go in, we borrow. Just think about this: we borrow money. You borrow 1 billion shillings. You take 7 years to build something, and then when it's completed, 2 years later, it has not been commissioned. Nobody has ever used it. So that tells you in the first place that it was built. We built something without the need. So you go and build something and then you wait for a need to arise. I mean, it's just nonsensical. But that's where we are, right? We don't have money to spend on right now. I'm telling you, we don't have even 1 shilling towards development. The other thing that's gonna shock you, you guys know that when we spend, for example, this year we're sending 400 billion into the counties. By law, these counties are not supposed to spend more than 70% of those funds on recurrent expenditure. 30% is supposed to be on development. You will be shocked if you actually dig deeper and see what this 30% is spent on, right? You just hear development, you think they're actually doing things related to development. You find out that they are buying seeds, and they're calling that development. They are planting flowers and they're calling that development. It's nonsensical. That's why you can have, look at a county like Mandera County. We spent 100 billion in about 6-7 years into that county. Then you look at what do you get from that? You look at the literacy rates still in the 20s, right? 80% of people cannot read. You look at poverty rates. People are still very poor. You look at infrastructure, you don't have roads. You look at schools in bad shape. You look at hospitals in bad shape. Then you ask yourself, what did we get for this 100 billion? What did you get from that? But when you really look at how the money is spent, it makes sense to you, because if you send 100 billion in 6-7 years, and half of it is stolen by politicians, now you're left with 50. The other 50, 60% of it or 70% of it goes to exorbitant salary and allowances. And you look at, the changes that you actually see is very little, but it makes sense. If you send 100 billion to someone, and 80% of that eventually ends up in people's pockets, there's no economic activity. And one thing that the primary test that you can use to see whether or not we are actually making progress is to ask yourself this question. Each county is supposed to be self-sufficient in the long run, right? We can't have a situation where we have 47 counties that cannot support themselves. So if you spend 100 billion in one county, and you go back and you ask yourself, have we made any progress? These counties, like Turkana County, like Mandera, they cannot raise more than 1% of their annual cost. So just think about what that means. They are running the government, and they cannot support themselves for more than 2 or 3 days out of the year. The rest of it has to be supported. You have a county that spends $1 billion on domestic travel, and the same county cannot raise more than 250 million in their own revenue. And then when you look at this 250 million, what it's actually made of. It's market entrance fees, it's slaughterhouse fees. So you spend 100 billion to build what? To build a slaughterhouse? You know what I mean? And remember that 100 billion is not like money you had. You actually went into debt to do that. That's why I keep telling you guys, when you look at how we're spending our money, um, we have idiots in office. I mean, I hate to tell you that, but you have people that don't know what the heck they're doing in office. And so right now we are sitting on almost 11 trillion in debt. There's nothing to show for it. The government still wants to go ahead and propose new projects. The money's going to be spent the same way they've spent the last 9 trillion, right? They're not learning anything. They're not learning anything. And so I keep going back to the point that we don't have anyone else that we can expect to come and save us. It's going to be us. It's going to be us looking at these things, providing civic education, and getting involved in politics, right? Not everyone wants to be a politician, but you're going to have to do it because what happens when we step away, people like, all of us on this space are smart people. You know what's good, what's not good policy. But if you look at our history, smart people have shied away from political leadership because it's dirty, because it's a lot of mudslinging. But the outcome of that is the situation that we have right now, where we're being ruled by clowns and thieves, and that's just a natural consequence of smart people staying away from politics.
Larry?
Yes, Bonnie. All right. Okay.
Yes.
Abdi, go ahead.
Maybe I will follow through to Bonnie on an audit report concern, probably. Bonnie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Yes.
hear you.
Thank you always for the update on the report, the financial and the audited reports. I will talk today
Mm-hmm.
to the Auditor General report on the Ministry of Environment. I'm not a financial
Yep.
expert, but these are revelations that are in public domain, which I want you to look at them. And there is a
Yes.
significant concern regarding the management of funds and the
Mm-hmm.
effectiveness of the tree planting initiative. Key highlighted issues include: the report indicates discrepancy in the allocation and utilization of funds meant for the environmental conservation projects, including the ambitious tree planting campaign. There were instances of funds being diverted or underutilized, raising questions about their transparency and accountability. Two, the Auditor General also found the procurement process for the goods and services related to tree plantings were marred by irregularities,
Mm-hmm.
including inflated costs, awarding of contract without proper competitive bidding. This has led to suspicion of corruption and misuse of public funds. Three, the report also questions the accuracy of the reported number of trees planted. In some cases, the numbers that have significantly overstated. There is lack of proper documentation to verify these claims. This casts doubts on the effectiveness of the program and whether the environmental impacts are realized as claimed. Finally, it also says there was a lack in monitoring and evaluation, lack of robust monitoring and evaluation mechanism to track the progress and impact of the tree planting initiative without proper oversight. It is difficult to assess whether uh, the environmental goals being met, and opens to door to further misuse of these funds. And he says there is 140 million or 150 million
Mm-hmm.
from 2022-2023 budget, I think 2023-2024 or whatever budget, that's not accounted. So this also raises a very significant. These findings that points to a serious governance and mismanagement issues within the ministry, calling for urgent reforms to ensure public funds are effectively utilized, that environmental program to deliver tangible results. This is my view too. Maybe it's something you can look at from a financial perspective. Thank you.
The problem that you're describing is a common problem across the government. Every one of those things that you mentioned is things, 80% of them are gonna be common in almost every department, every sort of ministry in the government. When I go and I start looking at some of these documents, I don't know where to start, because what you just described is exactly what happened. You have for example, irregular allocation or awarding of contracts, where they just go. You saw yesterday, for example, one of the the Energy and Petroleum Authority, where they go in, they sort of hold this tendering process. You have 4 companies respond, 2 companies qualify, they have all the documentation required, and they sort of, you know, they come in with a quote that's acceptable based on what the minister wanted to use, and then 2 days later after they win the contract. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Monkey.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yep.
So awesome. So, you know, again, an example like that where the Energy and Petroleum Authority issues a tender, 4 companies respond, 2 of them meet the criteria, 2 of them are told that, hey, you know, you guys have won the contract, you're gonna do 50% of what we wanted to do, and you go home thinking that you've won. And just think about if you are a business person and you've gone in and you've responded to a request for a proposal, wanting to do the right thing, right? Wanting to do the right thing. You provided everything that they asked for. And this, you know, even look, I'm in, you know, the private sector, right? I know what it takes to put together a response to a tender. Like there's a lot of time investment that goes into that, making sure that you meet what they're asking for. You know, companies prepare this like 2 or 3 months. But the company that I work for, when we're sending out a proposal, we spend like 3 months preparing for this. So there's a lot of energy and time and money that goes into it. So you're told that you've won the contract, and then 2 days later, you get a message saying that they've decided to go with someone else. And they're issuing this contract to a company that did not even bid. Okay, oftentimes these companies are new, they've been set up like 6 months before, they don't even have bank statements. And then in this example, the contract was like for 546 million, I believe. They end up paying the new contract who did not even bid 4 times the amount. Okay, but I'm telling you, that's not a rare occurrence. That's like the norm when I'm looking at some of these places. And so the saddest part is this. That report that you're just talking about, Abdi, is in the public domain. Our parliament has access to that information, right? They can call up the heads of those departments and say, why did you guys do this, right? We are reading a report here saying that you guys awarded a contract to someone that did not bid on it. You end up paying 4 times the amount. Why did you do that? They are not doing it, right? So I think people need to understand that our institutions are not effective. We will not be in this situation, even from a fiscal standpoint, if our parliament functioned. Every time our executive branch proposes a budget, parliament is supposed to look at that and approve it. Whenever the government wants to borrow money, our parliament is supposed to look at it and then see whether or not it's reasonable, it's sustainable. How can you have a government that increases our debt by 450% in a period of 10 years and our ability to service that debt has not increased? You know, you guys know that I'm an economist. I have spent many years, you know, helping companies with financial transactions. And if you walk up to me and you tell me that you want to borrow money, the first thing I want to look at is, you know, your current situation, right? I'm going to look at your balance sheet. How much debt do you have? Can you afford to take more debt, right? Any commercial lender would do that. But somehow our parliament does not force that on the government. So the government says, hey, we're going to borrow, you know, like this year, they're going to borrow almost $1 trillion. And it's not for development, it's to continue paying these fat salaries, right? Nobody is doing anything about it. I'm just looking at, for example, the county of Lamu right now, a county that has about 100 and so Lamu has about 143 people. Just think about that. This is a small town, 143 people in one county. And you look at how much we are sending to that county, and you look at what's actually happening with that money when they get to the ground, it's nothing. You look at 10 years, there's absolutely no development, nothing, because the funds either get stolen outright or they get paid to these you know, politicians. And again, politicians can always try to steal, right? But you hope that you have institutions that are actually effective. I live in the United States. I'm telling you, if you are politicians, member of parliament, or a governor, and you misuse resources in this country, it does happen every now and then, but it's very rare. And when it does happen, People go to jail for 50 years, right? Because the law functions, right? People are serious about making sure that we do not misuse public resources. Our situation in Kenya right now is that nobody is doing a damn thing about it. We are on our own. And I want to make sure that people understand that.
Thank you, Bonnie. I 100% agree with you. Parliament has failed its mandate to look after the people interest. And I think these are the reasons why we need to go the people route and to recall them. And I think that was that budget was 2022-2023, and the amount was 150 million to 47 countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdi. I think Dr. Onyango, can you come in and tackle? I see Josephine also is here, and David, Dr. Onyango, then Josephine, then David, then Nicholas, in that order.
Sorry, Hillary. If you can let Josephine go first, then I come in.
All right. Later. Yeah, Josephine, go ahead. David, Nicholas, then we come back to Dr.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me, Hillary? Thank you. My name is Josephine. I want to believe everyone is well. I want to say good evening to every Kenyan, wherever you are. And within your timelines, I just say if it's morning, good morning. If afternoon, good afternoon. Yeah. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, Irarian, and also for taking the opportunity to introduce this topic. Personally, from my point of view, when President Ruto came up with the bottom-up economy, personally, it meant a lot. And even despite that, reading the document, personally, I actually went ahead and I was one of the persons that believed in the strength that President Ruto came up with and how he thought about the bottom-up economy. And actually, even in my own way of thinking, I started even trying to analyze it, because when I went down to the ground, people would ask me, but in bottom up, what is it? How does it mean? And how does it work? Honestly, personally, how I thought about the bottom up would work would have been tremendous if it was applied the way I thought. Because I would even go down and break it down into structures and try to show people how best it would be. Maybe majority of us, personally, I come from Makueni County, and we've grown up in a very hard times, and things were very hard. There was no water, there was nothing. So my thinking was, with the bottom-up economy, that we have the piece of land, what would happen? With the bottom-up economy, we have already in each and every village right now, due to the hardships, at least we can have more than 100 people in a village who are educated and who got a job. And what I thought would be, so that we improve our economy and improve our food security, actually we would establish what is the problem. Like in Makueni County, the problem is water. And I came up with that strategy, and I was trying to tell people, I believe that the bottom-up economy, we have a piece of land. We can have 100 people or maybe 50 people who are educated. We come together in our community, and then the government does maybe 2 to 3 boreholes within a ward, and then in every community also we can establish several boreholes, whereby in every year we would have at least each family having an irrigation taking place in 1 acre piece of acre of a land, whereby they can grow some food, actually respectively, even with or without rains. At least we can have
Josephine,
We've lost her.
Yeah, we lost Josephine. Josephine, where are you? Oh my. Maybe
And
she
then
dropped.
Hillary, I have a question for Josephine.
She dropped. Let her come back then. Or what do you think? Okay,
Yeah,
tell us. Okay, Linda, go ahead.
I wanted to ask Kenyans back home, are they closely involved with the government, or I guess whatever is going on in terms of maybe people being involved from the county level? I don't know what the role of the MCAs are, but that's just... Yes, go ahead.
Having thought about that, I really try to elaborate it to the people in the easiest terms to understand how important and how easy we would have come up with an economy whereby we have plenty of food and we don't even need to depend on the government. At the same time, I was trying to show them how best we can do, even grow some plants whereby they are trees within the acring of the land where you are doing your farming, and you do actually trees that even you can use them as fruits or as food in one way or the other. And that, according to me, that would have really improved our economy and meant also our food enrichment, and we wouldn't be having our society suffer. But now what we are seeing, I don't know if the other way around, but guys, nevertheless, what I believe in, we have the power, we have the potential, and we have the capacity to protect our nation. We know how rich our nation is. We know how best we can do about it. And with the same reasoning, we need to come up and tell the agriculture, CS, listen, if you do not have ideas on how to go about the agriculture from different territories, kindly engage people from different areas who can give a proper understanding on how we can do our own irrigation and our own cultivation and our own ways of coming up with the food security. Not telling people that we give you just the GMO seeds, and then once you plant once, you cannot plant them again. Then what is happening? We are also trying to destroy our fertile lands with the fertilizers day in, day out. We also need to come up with the proper structures on how to manage our animals so that we also make proper use of our animal manure, which is the best for farming. Guys, I think we need to take up the battle and stand for our country. Let our president, we make also the president understand that this is our country. He's only a president for 10 years, and he can, for 5 years, not even 10 years. And if that, we will allow him to get to 2027. But he needs to know that this is our country, and we are not going to look at him and sit back and watch him drain us to the feet. I think Robis has just said something that people are given houses without even a balcony. This is an elder person. How will they survive? And that's very true, because in Mombasa, I live in Mombasa, in Pakistan Point, actually exactly that is what they have. You are given a house which you've bought, it's just no balcony. Where will you hang your clothes? The house has no kitchen. How are you expected to survive in a one-bedroom house without a kitchen? You are just given a place like a stone. That's a kitchen next at your doorstep. Guys, we need to stand up and streamline things. As much as we want to complain, let Ruto know the country belongs to us, and we have the power and authority to run our country the way we want it to be run. Again, it's very painful to hear somebody who is a foreigner owning in our own land, a land over 60,000 acres, yet we have a citizen of Kenya who cannot afford 50 by 100 plot at least to reside, and he is a citizen. Guys, we need to wake up, we need to stand up and say no to this. We need to see even the senior citizens of this country or the big families of this country who are owning big pieces of land which their parents grabbed many years before our parents also managed to. We need to see them donating this land to Kenyans. We need to have uzalendo patriotism, so that when my brother has a piece of land I am comfortable when they have a place to stay. We are not supposed to be seeing people living in the street, seeing people who are really suffering after retirement. They don't have any place to go, or they don't, even after their old age, they have no place to live. Guys, can we pick it up from where we are and start thinking and resonating and try to push these families who have such big lands, so that those lands which are not utilized to be donated to the citizens of Kenya who do not have a land, so that everyone in this country can have a place to call home. And then we come together and champion the issue of irrigation, whereby we can do irrigation and at the same time plant also trees at the same time. When we are harvesting our food, also we have a clear environment whereby actually it's carbonated free. I think that's something that we can do. We reason together, we have the brains, God has blessed us, and I can say Kenyans, God has highly blessed us with brilliant minds, and we can make good use of ourselves. We don't need to keep on complaining. We want to tell President we can lead him. We want to tell the CS of agriculture, if they do not know what to do about the agriculture, let them engage us. We are going to guide them. We don't need their jobs, but we can guide them on how best we can have a proper food security in our country. Thank you so much, Irario, for giving me that time. Fellow Kenyans, wherever you are, I really appreciate you for listening to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that powerful submission. As we transition to the next speaker, I think she talked about something about GMO, which I would like to talk about it also, to direct these conversations towards the GMO food, which is not really there. We didn't talk much about it. I will start. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Yeah, so I would say the food we eat and the media we consume are powerful tools of controlling and shaping our perceptions, and they impact our health. I think the introduction of the livestock bill, the GMO, alongside the reality of the organic food, often not as accessible, only accessible to the wealthy, highlights pressing issue of food security in our nation. Kenya, I read some data. Kenya, I think the Daktari will correct us. Kenya is ranked as the 4th in the cancer incident, a fact closely linked to the kind of food we consume. I think this is the stark reality that underscores the urgent need to scrutinize and influence the bills being passed that affects our food supply. Additionally, I think many money loans our country take come with socio-economic conditions. I think Boniface might address this. They come with some socio-economic conditions that further complicates the issue of food security. They tie financial aid to changes that often benefit large corporations at the expense of the local farmers and consumers. These loans comes with such preconditions. We need to have an open conversation about food security, ensuring that Kenyans have access to food and nutritious and affordable food. This should be a national priority. We must advocate for policies that support sustainable agricultural practices, protect local food sources, and resist monopolization of our food supply by corporate interests that are not in the country. I think addressing these challenges, I think head on is crucial not only for our health, but also for our sovereignty and economic stability. By staying informed, engaged with the legislative process, we can push for a food system that benefits everyone, not just select few. Food security, I think, means empowering our communities to have control of their source of food and ensuring every Kenyan can lead a healthy, dignified life. So I'll say that in my final submission to this GMO, and say, well, I say GMO have potential to improve crop yield and food security, but we must consider the long-term health and environmental impact of glyphosate. This is glyphosate is something in GMO widely used. It's a herbicide used to link with GMO. There is growing evidence suggesting that glyphosate may harm ecosystem and human health. So we should push for independent research and transparent regulatory process, ensuring that public health and environmental sustainability are prioritized over corporate interest. So I think both the president and our MPs might be compromised by foreign and private corporations' interest pushing for regulations that benefit these entities at the expense of ordinary Kenyans. Look at the MAG bill, the bill proposed by Senator Enoch Wambua. It's a glaring example, requiring Kenya to obtain a license for dengue for 1 million fine or 2 years in jail. It's punitive measure that raises serious concerns about our food security. This isn't an isolated case. They are similar with the Seed and the Plant Variety Act, the Livestock Bill Act of 2024. These regulations are all seen to target our ability to grow organic traditional food, which have been part of our heritage for generations. Such laws appear designed to control our food supply, potentially waving way for foreign interests to dominate our agricultural sector. It is alarming. Our government is prioritizing corporate benefits over well-being of its citizens. We need to question the motivations behind these laws and advocate policies that protect our farmers, food, rather than undermining them. This parliament and executive has betrayed people's trust. It's time to reoccupy these offices, including even Kilimo House. It's all crime scene. My final take. This is what I will say. We will always be in the book of lamentation. Every time we're always in sorrow and grief from this government that come in the name of I will say this government rose invoking the name of the Lord. They come through the prayers, leading us into reminiscence of the book of lamentation, filled with grief, sorrow, rather than the promised land of milk and honey. I think the oath they took were meant to protect the constitution, serve the people, that their actions suggest otherwise. With that, I'll rest my case on the GMO and the food security. Anybody else can come in. Thank you.
May I? May I come in? Hello, can you do? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Abdi, I've gotten your submission quite well, and I would like us to go. I would like to give my submission about environment, and it relates to food security, of course, and a very interesting topic about genetically modified organism foods, the GMO foods that the government allowed to take up the market of food production in Kenya. What worries me about GMO is that GMO, as the name suggests, is genetically modified organisms. So when you modify an organism, maybe you or your chicken or your cow or your crop or your vegetable in the farm is genetically modified. It can be done through selective breeding. It can be done through cloning. It can be done through grafting. Mostly grafting does with plants and cloning with animals. And sometimes when you get a specific trait in a cow, maybe productivity of milk, maybe they are being fat, you can do selective breeding so that you maintain that trait so that you have multiple production of milk. GMO was introduced in many years ago in attempt to address a world food shortage. A fast growing population needs fast production of food and in mass. So that's why Western countries decided to do cloning so that they enhance on productivity. It was more about quantity and not quality. When we talk about nutrition and dietetic, quantity compromises quality, because through quality is where you get the natural food in its natural setup. For example, if you take the great chicken, those chicken that are sold in the eateries in Nairobi City or any other town in Kenya, vis-a-vis those ones that we consume here locally in Ugunja, Siaya, the chicken are different. They are different because those ones were specifically modified to grow faster and mature faster, such that one does not take care of the nutrition value the chicken needs and the growing process the chicken naturally needs in its natural form. They were just the growing trait. There's a bit of cloning that was done to their DNA that make them grow faster beyond the ordinary ones, against the nature's design of how a chicken you might find it is deficient in omega-3, deficient in magnesium, calcium, deficient in maybe other traces of nutrients that are vital in a chicken's normal growth. While those ones that are naturally bred back at home have them. Now, with the predators that consume the consumers of primary food, like human beings, like us, the reason as to why our body needs the naturally bred chicken is that they grow natural way, consume the natural food that has those nutrients that are essential that our body need. So when we overconsume those ones that lack those traces of nutrients, we realize that our health is compromised, that such that even our immune system cannot acquire the nutrients and the building blocks required for them to be effective. That's how cancer advances. That's how other opportunity diseases advances. And even the Western countries, they are so advanced medically that they can take care of their population that lack such nutrients. They even have nutrition supplement tablets being sold in shops and everywhere in chemistry and even in hospitals. They can take care of the nutrition deficiency that is created by consuming GMO. But how do we compare to that here in Kenya? Here in Kenya, we even lack the means of fighting the easiest to treat disease like malaria. So we cannot compensate for nutrition deficiency as the Western countries are. That's why the government is wrong to allow GMO to take center stage in the markets of food production in Kenya. That's why we are losing. So that one aside, it's a very interesting topic and I would like to engage in it in another day. I really wanted to give my submission about environment and food security. Now, due to submission about audit report that I've just had, I now have answers, dear Kenyans, on to why the government deliberately dwells on tree planting and purchase of seedlings. You've heard of over quotation and malpractices in the procurement process and exaggerated prices of seedlings. These people procure seedlings at 5 shillings, and then in the report for payment, they procure them at 200 shillings. So when they talk of planting 10 million trees, you can do the math. So that's where the money is lost. That's why the bottom line about environment is missing in Kenyan's government conversation about saving the environment. What my little understanding of ecology tells me about an environment that is prospering as much as flora and fauna is concerned is that environment should be kept and treated and nurtured in such a manner that conservation of the natural indigenous species of both flora and fauna in that kind of an environmental setup are given top priority. Here in Kenya, the government engages us in planting trees, and you are given species of eucalyptus and pines. Here in Siaya, those are not local indigenous trees. I can tell you that in Makueni, they are not local indigenous trees. In Rift Valley, they are not local indigenous trees. When you plant exotic species of trees in an environment, you are doing well, but not well enough, because an environment does not comprise of trees only. An environment comprises of microorganisms, arthropods, other forms of animals, other forms of kingdoms of species of animals that live in the environment, and they depend on indigenous trees that they were naturally selected to live amongst. So when you are bringing in exotic species of trees like eucalyptus, like pines, like cypresses, and make them dominate up to 80% of a local environment, you are interfering with the natural setup of ecology in that environment. You are not saving that environment. You are actually ruining it. When you ruin the environment, you ruin the health of flora and fauna, and therefore you end up ruining the health of humans living around. So we are hurting ourselves unaware, because the government is emphasizing on initiatives that can make them milk money from us, instead of initiatives that can make them actually save the environment and conserve it. Moi was doing it right. We who were born in the early 90s, we were lucky to witness the existence of 4K Club in primary schools, where children were taught how to plant seedlings and nurture tree nurseries and plant the correct varieties of trees in their environment. In the local school that I went, people could collect seeds from within the villages and plant them in the school. And in every closing day, parents will part ways with at least 4 or 5 seedlings of trees that were planted by pupils in the school. Now, this government cannot think of that. They are thinking of ways in which they can make money by buying, purchasing. If that one would have been implemented right now, we could be nurturing a generation that appreciates and knows how trees are nurtured, the correct tree seedlings to plant, and how to plant them, and how to conserve environment right away from the primary school, from the basic education. They could grow along with it. Instead, we are having government officials and civil servants assembling somewhere in some chief's camp with seeds that we don't know are brought from where, and they are exotic species, and they are planted anywhere, anyhowly, and nobody cares for them. They are built again to dry up for cows to eat, and it is just funny. What they care about is the money they are making from it. So we are losing it. We are losing it about environment. We are losing it. And when we lose on environment, you know what happens to local weather patterns and climatic change that we are currently witnessing. I can tell you that already farmers are losing the track of calendar here in the Western Kenya region, where we are blessed to have 2 seasons in every year. We always have drought in January and February. This year, it rained throughout January and throughout February. It happened last year also. Farmers lost the pattern on the right time to plant and the right time to harvest. When that one happens, you realize that when farmers now expect rains, it is now dry. And that's how so many farmers lost in their farms. This is happening because we are messing the environment. Another thing about these trees that are brought to be planted by people just planting them anyhowly. As tree species like Eucalyptus globulus or Eucalyptus grandis are water guzzlers. You plant them in a stream, along a stream. That stream will dry up in the next 5 years. It will no longer exist. It will change from permanent to seasonal. You plant them close to a farm in less than 30 meters away from your farm. Allelopathic effect from that species of tree will make your farm never to be as robust as it used to be. I can assure you. So the government needs to first address the gap of knowledge on how to nurture the environment that the citizens have, if they really mean to a business on saving the environment. Public participation and public civic education needs to be done on how we can take care of local environments in our local setups. Not just the business of planting trees. We must know which tree to be planted, where and when, and how to nurture them. We must know which local breeds of trees work best in every locality across the country. We must focus on how we can reclaim the quick encroachment of aridity in some regions of Kenya. And we must learn the discipline on how we can treat and take care of waste disposals across the country. If you go to local markets in Kenya, you realize that fish vendors just pour over water that they have used to wash fish anyhowly. You realize that those who are chopping potatoes and tomatoes, if the local authorities, all the municipal councils of the town councils are not strict enough, they'll be messed up. You go to Nairobi, Mudhurwa, it is a pile of mismanaged waste disposal. Go to Mkure, go to Dandora, go to everywhere. We must first, as citizens, be taught how to learn the discipline of waste disposal, and the government and every local authority and county governments must take waste disposal and treatment seriously if we really mean business about environment in Kenya. Otherwise, let me not take up much space. Let me leave it for the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. That was a very good submission. I like the part of the public participation. I think there should be a lot of emphasis on public participation, and this is really happening in with the environment. Many local conservation groups feel excluded from their decision making process. There is a sense that the community involvement is often symbolic than being substantial. More environmental activists continue to face harassment, which runs counter to the principle of inclusive governance and participatory environmental management. They are being kicked out of their land and they are being told to leave. And I think there is a recent Court of Appeal decision on the finance bill that also highlighted the importance of public participation, which is mandatory. Having said that, I yield the mic to the next speaker in the order you are following each other. Thank you for that.
Welcome, Lady Justice. How are you doing before Dr. come in? How are you doing today?
I'm well, Hillary. Thank you for having me.
All right, welcome on board. Dr. Go ahead. Or Ruby, there's something you want to chime in, Dr.
Yeah, I wanted to just follow in to the previous speaker before Dr. I'm sorry if I didn't get your name. One thing you were talking about is GMO, and I think we have to differentiate between what's GMO and RNA. So GMO food has been there for a while, whereby a crop is modernized or the yield is improved in order to accommodate the population. However, what Bill Gates has come up with is called the RNA-resistant crop, which I believe he has already introduced in a country like Nigeria. Now they have that maize. And the problem with that is with RNA-resistant crop, basically it can be modified. Like the gene of that seed, let's say a seed for maize, can be manipulated to the population where it's being grown. So for example, if this crop, if let's say Bill Gates decide to, African population need to reduce, and they can target a DNA within the Kenyan population, for example, and reduce the gene pool of the population, and therefore not resistant to many diseases, and we could be very vulnerable. So they can even choose. It's a weapon, because they can even choose to use it as a weapon to target the population, and eventually you can be killed. So they're saying that the RNA crop is just to manipulate the seed so that a gene is manipulated for the seed to improve the yield, but it can also be manipulated to target the population. So that is very dangerous, being the fact that right now, if one of the sustainable development goals or global warming issue is the increasing population. And each time that I watch the news, when they're talking about the increased population, you always see an African face, which means Africans are not supposed to be to increase their population. Even right now, the the running president of the U.S., Harris. Harris keep on talking about the African population is between, like, the teen is growing, and it's gonna be rampant in the next 30 years. So you start to wonder, are these people, they can use this RNA to actually target it, and they use that. They can say that, we want to reduce African population, and this can be used as a weapon. When it comes to food security, when I was growing up in the village in Kenya, we grew up near Lake Victoria, and the lake is available. And one day I was like, what is going on? And people would say, like, I can't believe you guys have this much water and you cannot even produce enough food that's feeding Kisumu, for example. And that kind of hit me, and I started to actually, this is the time I was really young, and started to question why the Lake Victoria was not being used. And as you guys, most of you probably know, that Lake Victoria, we cannot use that lake because of Egypt, because of the treaty that was signed by the British long time ago. And if we really care about food security, in using that Lake Victoria, we would be like importing tomatoes right now. We would be importing so much out of the country. We can yield so much food just from the Lake Victoria alone using that water. But no, we can't because of this treaty that was signed. And if I use that example to come to the leasing of the land that the bidder economy, the bottom-up economy, the president is talking about, like people will be forced to lease their land to international corporation. You're not going to get that land back, because this treaty that was signed by the British before the during the colonial period, we got our independence, and this treaty is still binding. And I believe it already ended. But still, that Lake Victoria, you cannot use it to do irrigation, massive irrigation of food, whatever you want to produce. You can go fetch the water from the lake. You can go and go fish in the lake, but you cannot use that lake. In Kisumu alone, like Kisumu City, there's water rationing. So you can imagine this water rationing. We are not allowed to use that water. So if there's anything that thinks that now the leasing of the land in Kenya, you will be able to get that back. Once it gets to international corporation, you're never going to be able to get it back. Somebody was talking about, like, again, the tree planting. In the tree planting, when I was in school as a young girl, there's something that was used that every pale or every child, we were being given responsibility to plant a tree. You have to plant that tree, and it was each student's responsibility to nurture that tree and take care of that tree until that tree is grown. And I remember taking care of my tree during the holiday period. We were even told how to make sure that you you take a bottle and you fill it with water, and you put that bottle inside the soil, and the water, that tree will be able to get that water. Why don't we practice that nationwide? Why can't somebody promote that nationwide? And then we everybody would nurture their tree, and it kind of became fun, because you'd be like, oh, my tree is really doing good. It became something that you were nurturing, something that you were growing, something that was just something that you were responsible for. It was fun for many students. Why can't we introduce that instead of like using it? We were allowed to plant many trees. Like, we were being given like all these nursery trees. So I mean, we have to be very careful, and as we have to be able to claim our land, and we have to stand strong, guys. We have to increase our civil education and educate our mothers on what's going on. For me, I've been educating my mom a lot, because believe it or not, my mom kind of believed that President Ruto is a godly man and yada yada. And a lot of our mom or grandparents believe that just because he gave Arambe to school. And when I started educating my mom of what is going on, and I'm like, please, when you go to your church, can you talk to your friend? Can you talk to this person? And I told her about the groundnut thing, and my mom was like, no, that's not possible. Because my mom plants groundnuts every day, and that is something that even if you go to our village, to our home right now, my mom, if before you leave, she'll give you a gift of like, 2 gorogoros of peanuts. And if you come in, peanuts, we use it for socialization. So not only the food thing is going to kill our culture, because that is what we used to socialize for. So imagine if your food is rationed, you'll be paranoid if somebody comes to your house, because the only thing you have so small that the government has given you for you to eat. We're not going to be able to share. At some point, they're even going to tell us you cannot share your food with your neighbor. Now you can't share your seed. Where are they going to stop if we don't stand up? And we really I'm a busy mom, and I have shied away from social media for so long. But trust me, this thing has really brought me into another level of activism, and I just feel like I feel like I'm burning inside. I'm like, this cannot happen because I'm considering I have a sister. She depends totally on the land, and I'm like, okay, now that burden is going to be transferred to me. If ever she's moved out of her land, then I'll be like, okay, I have to send my sister money, my aunt money, all these people that depend on the land. So yeah, so thank you guys, and I'm here for more. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Ruby, for those comments. And I just want to highlight the concerning influence of foreign and corporate interests, particularly tied to loans and grants. Maybe Mwangi also can speak to this. I think this interest often drives policies that prioritize, I think, profit over the well-being of our citizens and local farmers, with a worrying, I will say, trends towards sacrificing public health and environmental sustainability. I agree with you. The push for GMO is a prime example. While it boosts yield, there is a long-term effect on the environment and health risk. So I think this is some of the things that, and I'm wondering why all these grants and all this money are tied to a certain specific. Uh, they are tied to these agricultural things. Having said that, I'll yield the mic to the next speaker. If Hillary or Lady Justice have something to say, and then we move on. Thank you.
Oh, I think we'll move to the next speaker. Is that Phil?
I have a comment too.
Go ahead, Motomota.
Yeah, I was just taking notes based on what I guess the comments that were being stated here. When it comes to the foreign policies that are tied towards the grants and interest, I think one of my observations are we lack proper negotiators who sit at the table with the Kenya government in the process of all these loans and programs that are being implemented. And one of the things that we've always tried to do as the diaspora is to try to get engaged with the Kenya government. But the challenges that we've continued to experience is having access to the government officials, including the CS, where we could have a project that we want the government to be involved in, but they do not follow through, or they do not seem interested because whatever their goal and vision is just what it is, and they're not willing to work with the public. So my question is, how can we as Kenyans ensure that the public also has representation where we have good negotiators and advocates of the public? I'll give you guys an example. For instance, here in Delaware, I sit in the Delaware African Caribbean Affairs Commission, which is a commission that is tied to the governor. And one of our goals is geared towards advocating for the needs of the Africans, Caribbeans, and African Americans' needs within the communities. Another goal also is to advocate for our African countries back home. So we work closely with the legislators to ensure that any policies that do not align with what our interests are, we are working closely with them and giving them feedback, as well as also having public meetings where we are disseminating the information to the public. So my question is, how can we have a structure where us Kenyans are also closely involved with the government, where we also have our own ways that we've organized ourselves to keep them accountable and also to ensure that our interests are being taken care of? The second recommendation is, how can the African diaspora be closely involved, where it is mandatory for the government to have proper negotiators also at the table as their advisors, because we live here and we see a lot of things that are going on, but many a times the government will make decisions that from our end will feel like they are selling our country. So how can we make that happen, or how can we make the government accountable? Because if the public has representation, then at least they'll will have kind of a way where there's no disconnect. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you.
I wrote other comments, but I'll continue. I'll chime in later on. I don't want to take too long.
Thank you, Esther. I will just read a few comments online from our readers as we go on, but I will still yield the mic to the next speaker as we look at what are our comments online now. And there's also questions coming for Robbie on the online comment. If you can have a look at them, and that was it. And who is it? This is to Boniface Mwangi is doing the Lord work. He's patriot as a diaspora, and he knows public officer who steals, misappropriates public funds. Any amount is sure to go to jail. That is from Asma, and we have Sir John K.E. The misallocation of loans will ultimately come at a high cost to Kenyans people, as they will be required to repay the debts that yielded no tangible gains or advancement. It is time to demand accountability, openness regarding the use of borrowed money. We should not be forced to pay back these loans, if not any concrete project to demonstrate the use of them. Thank you, and I yield the mic.
Thank you, Abdi. Does anybody have an answer for Moto before we go to David Wakabi? Bonnie, please go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, I was gonna say, look, all these problems, to address this problem that we're having of the government misbehaving, the government not listening, the government stealing resources, it comes down to the character of the people that you put into office. I mean, we can spend the whole day here talking about how to fix it, but it starts with making sure that we elect the right people into parliament, right? If you had a parliament right now that that respects itself, you will have um, committees in parliament trying to find out why the government is wasting people's resources. Why do we have so much corruption? Nothing is being done about it. But you have a parliament that doesn't care, right? You have, just look at the people that we put into parliament, right? Look at just go and look at people like, Salasia, people like Oscar Sudi, right? We are not electing people that know what what it means to actually be in parliament. They have no understanding of their role in a constitutional democracy. They just think that you go in, you become a celebrity, you build your online profile, and that's what that's what it means to be an MP, right? Our own citizens also do not understand the purpose of having a parliament. For example, people think that their MP's primary job is to distribute bursaries, right? So, for example, if you look at the financial situation of our country right now, the average citizen does not understand the complicity of parliament in that problem. They don't understand that we cannot rack up 9 trillion in debt in 10 years if you had a parliament that works. So we have to take responsibility for the fact that we're electing thieves. And I'm saying all of us, right? These people do not get into office through over people. We put them into office, and I'm just gonna say something that's controversial. Even when we have information about the criminal nature of some of these people, we still elect them. I'll give you an example. Nairobi County, the first governor there was Governor Kidero. He came into office, he looted Nairobi to the ground. Okay. Then in the next election, he's running against another guy who is according to him, he's a reformed fraudster, right? The guy used to go and manufacture fake documents and sell people's property. Could not even complete a prison sentence.
We are losing you.
In Mombasa, Chimotewa, right? He comes out. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. So I'm talking about our own complicity. We have to look in the mirror and also understand what we've done as citizens in creating this problem, right? We can, I mean, if you're gonna make progress, we have to look at our own selves and see how we've created this situation. Our country does not, we're not like Somalia where you just wake up with you buy a bunch of weapons and you're sort of You execute whoever is the leader, right? We put these people into office. I was giving the example of Nairobi, where Governor Kidero comes in, loses Nairobi to the ground. The next election is between him and someone else who has absolutely no qualification. He's never run anything. He has not done anything that can give you the impression that he's going to be a good leader. He's you know, a guy that did not even complete a prison sentence. He tells he was to be governor, and we elect him. He comes in 3 years later, he loses Nairobi to the ground, he's impeached. Then there's another election. And in this election, we have someone who has a history that can be verified, who's educated, who has a record of accomplishment. I'm talking about Paul Kapigade. He's running against a guy who has absolutely no qualifications. I'm talking about Sakaja, has never ran anything. He's never ran a kiosk. Can't even have the discipline to get an education like you and I. And you look at these two people, and the people select someone who does not have the discipline to even earn a bachelor's degree. He goes and procures something just so he can check a box. And we put that guy into office. And right now, you look at Nairobi, they are complaining about the looting that's happening. Nothing is getting done. We also have to look at us and say, why is it that we elect thieves? Why are we selecting the wrong people all the time? So we have to look at ourselves and say, we can do better. And so I'm trying to answer the question that was asked by that lady. To me, it comes down to the people that we elect. If you elect good people, people of good character, there's always going to be a few people that are going to be thieves, but that's not going to be the majority. If you look at right now, most people that are in government right now are thieves. You look at every county, when a governor leaves, there's an investigation by the EACC. Almost every governor of Muranga, governor of Siaya, governor of Migori, governor of Kiambu, like every single governor that comes out is under investigation because we are putting the wrong people into office. And I'm just telling you, there's no resources that we can devote as a country that are going to overcome the problems that we create by electing thieves. Even the ESCC, to me, is totally ineffective. But even if there was desire on the ESCC to fix this problem, you just don't have enough people or enough money, right? If we elect good people, that's gonna solve 90% of the problems. And that's what happens in a place like Canada or the US, where you elect people that are people with a good character, right? They're not thieves, they're not corrupt people. And that solves 90% of the problem. So if you elect me, for example, and I understand what it means to be a public servant, I'm gonna go to Parliament, and if a government wants to do something for, it wants to build, let's say, a stadium in my community, I'm gonna say, hey, I appreciate you wanting to do that, but I want to make sure that this project actually brings value to my people, right? Does it bring value? And I want to make sure that my people are involved in decision making, so that if we proceed with our project, we know how much it's gonna cost. We want to make sure that the investment is a prudent investment, and that the project is actually going to bring value to my people. But the people that we have right now, that's in Parliament, they just don't do that. So I think Kenya needs a total makeover. We need a culture reset. We need people that understand what does it mean to be a public servant. And we also need our own people to understand, what do you expect and what should you expect from someone in parliament? Their job is not to distribute bursaries. They're supposed to be holding the government accountable. They're supposed to make sure that the government is not wasting our resources. They're supposed to, how can you have a country where we've accepted corruption is part of our life right now? You look at our police, for example, everybody knows the police are corrupt, and yet nothing is done about it, right? So I'm saying we need a reset. We need a total makeover. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I make a comment on Bonnie?
Sure.
Bonnie, I think for me, my thought process when it comes to that, like, I guess comparing America and Kenya is one thing that is evident and people need to realize is that in America, most of the systems have been set in place to promote the rich. So in as much as we may not realize, they're pretty much, if I'm to give it a good word, it can be viewed as corrupt, so you can find you have a government official who is genuine, but the policies that have been set in place are actually favoring the rich or, the haves, as opposed to the lower class. So if we focus on changing the systems across the board, wherever, in every country that we are in, then that will actually take us to another level where we are trying to promote change. And we've seen that happen with the IMF, World Bank issues, and also within our internal policies. I don't know what state you are in, but I know in Delaware we are fighting about changing the entire system in America because the policy is geared towards keeping the poor and the middle class down, where you cannot lift yourself up, and the rich continue to be rich based on the policies that they've set in place. I just wanted to comment that so that we can realize that the Americans are sophisticated, where they've put their interests first. And if we try to just protect ourselves, then we'll be able to change. Or if we speak up, as the diaspora also from our different states, then we'll be able to protect the money that is also going back in Kenya to ensure people are getting that money and it's not getting stuck in between in the pipeline.
Can I just make a quick comment on that? I mean, so
Yeah.
the discussion I think that we're having is not whether or not the American system is perfect. The difference between a banana republic and a country that that functions is this. You look at, so I live in Texas, right? I live in Texas. My kids go to a public school system. If you follow me, you've seen where they go to school. It's always, there's always going to be, a few imperfections in the system. But what I'm talking about is 90%. If you look at the US, for example, if there's a budget for building a school, right? 95% or 98% of the what was intended is actually gonna end up happening. So they build a school, and you can see it's a good school. I don't have to take my kids to a private school because my public school works, and my kids are gonna succeed in that school, right? The difference between a place like Texas and Kenya is that in Kenya, they are taking 98% of the funds and using 2%. Do you understand the difference? Is that in a place like Kenya, 98% of the money is stolen, and the only amount that actually gets to the people is the 2%. In Texas, it's the opposite. If someone is going to steal, it's a very small fraction. So when I compare the Kenyan system and the US system, I'm not saying that the US system is perfect. I'm saying that it works. And how you know it works is I live here. Okay, I can afford to take my kids to a private school, but I don't need to do that because I know that I live in a place where the government functions, right? They have good teachers in the schools. My kids, everything that my kids want, whether it's academically, whether it's sports-wise, they get it from that school. And that's what we're trying to say. We're not shooting for a system that's perfect, right? I'm saying right now, in most places in Kenya, right, on, because you can't tell me that you're gonna, if your kid happens to be in a car accident tomorrow, most people are not gonna be able to take them to the local hospital because it's not gonna be staffed, they're not gonna have equipment. Going to a private school, many of you have their kids in a public school. You are paying money in taxes, but you don't actually get any services from it because the schools are garbage, right? So you're actually paying taxes that don't help you. I pay taxes here in Texas, and my kids go to a public school because it's a good school, right? If I send my kids to a hospital, they're gonna be taken care of. That's what we're talking about. When I'm driving on a road that's safe, right? That's so again, this is not a comparison about ideals. I'm talking about just basic things, right? You can't, I'm not saying America is perfect. I'm saying it's a good starting point. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Oh, could we please have David submit, and then we'll go to Dr. Ari, then Dr. Ajus. Thank you. David, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Judy. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you once again.
I think we lost you there. Can anybody hear him?
No, I can't hear him either.
Yeah, David, we lost you. Could you just drop and come back? In the meantime, could we go to Dr. then Dr. A?
All right. Thank you very much, Lady Justice, and all the speakers that have gone before. I think let me begin by just and I didn't introduce myself the first time. I am Dr. Duncan Onyango. I am an environmental engineer. There's some okay.
It's
There's
okay.
some noise from somewhere.
Yeah, somebody mic is unmuted. Can you mute all the mics for Dr. to speak? Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Dr. Please unmute and go ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I was not able to unmute myself previously. Okay, I was just saying I'm Dr. Duncan Onyango. I'm an environmental engineer. I teach in one of the public universities here in Kenya, the Technical University of Kenya. I'm also a consultant in environmental sustainability. Now, I want to begin by reiterating what my good friend Bonnie has just said, that the American system and all these other systems that we compare ourselves to or that we draw inspiration from may have their own weaknesses at a higher level, but at least they have built systems that work for the majority, for many of the people. Here we have a system, as Bonnie says, 98 to 2. We have gone way beyond the Pareto principle that says that 80% of our problems usually result from 20% of causes. But here we are talking about 98 to 2, or maybe even 99 to 1. So a system that works only for 1% of the elite up there and does not work for every other person is a system that we must speak up, not only speak against, but we must also take active steps towards going to rectify these problems. As Bonnie has challenged us, I'm sure he has always tasked us. We know where the solution lies. The solution lies in us stepping out, the elite of the society. Many a times we would we shy away from politics, but I think now I'm happy because most of us have realized that politics is too important and every aspect of our being and our development is intertwined with politics. And we can't leave it to these irresponsible people that we are talking about. Many people, we were trained knowing that we were trained growing up, or go to read very hard, get good grades, go to the university, you get a job. And most people for whom that principle worked, the people who got jobs after campus and they came to the middle life here in Kenya, they got comfortable and they forgot about what is happening. So for a long time, now we are waking up to realize that so many things are even happening in parliament in terms of legislations that under normal circumstances would have gone without our notice. But these are things that have very grave implications for our lives, like these agricultural laws that we are talking about here. So I want to challenge my fellow colleagues, my fellow elites. Let's not be comfortable in our professions. Let's not be comfortable in that the life is working for us. We can be able to afford the bare minimum for ourselves and the families, and we just don't seem to care about what else happens. We have seen that if we don't step out and take these and get ourselves into these into governance, then these politicians of old will run this country down in our eyes. Again, I had a lot of questions and points about the tree planting exercise. They actually call it tree growing. A good concept. They got a good concept, but as is a characteristic of this regime, they get every good concept. They get good concepts, but apply them wrongly, and they end up not working completely. The bottom-up economic transformation agenda was a good concept, looking at it from face value, but it doesn't work. in actual reality. Yeah, the tree growing exercise is a good concept. In fact, they are not even calling. I heard the previous the CS when she one time on TV saying, correcting the journalist, that it's not tree planting, it is tree growing, because we need to nurture them all the way. But and as long as that exercise is not is not based within schools, the best place to realize that idea, as has been pointed out, would be within our schools. I was greatly disappointed when the first exercise was launched during school holidays. I asked myself, do these people really know what they're doing? We really need to rethink some of those policies so that we know, as we ask ourselves what species of trees are being grown. That has been prosecuted very well, I think, by one of the speakers that came earlier. We must ensure they're the right species. And where do they come from? I haven't heard in my village local youth groups being constituted to form to start tree nurseries so that they can be able to sell seedlings to the government program. So where these seedlings come from in their millions, nobody knows. That must be answered. If that program is being done based in our school system and also used to empower the local communities, then it will be a good program. Otherwise, we'll end up with programs that were very good. I made reference to Galana Kulalu in my opening remarks. More than 10 years down the line, nobody knows where that project went, yet a lot of money was sunk. So the elite of our society, we must come forward. We have brilliant people in our universities, in our professions. We must be able to come out and correct the mess that is going on at Kilimo House. One of the greatest challenges, I don't know if somebody spoke to this when I stepped out, in our with our food security system, is this devolution of agriculture. Agriculture is supposed to be fully devolved, yet Kilimo House is filled up to capacity, so much so that they have overflown to Hill Plaza in Upper Hill. That is still Ministry of Agriculture. Kilimo House imejaa until they are the part of the Ministry of Agriculture at the national level at Hill Plaza in Upper Hill. Do we need all these people to be working on just policy? Because now at the ministry, at the national level, we were told that they're supposed to be working on national agricultural policy. Then the actual work is supposed to take place at the counties. Yet Kilimo House is full, Hill Plaza is full with people of the Ministry of Agriculture at national level. I happen to have provided project management support to the Ministry of Agriculture on a few programs. One of them is called the Small Scale Irrigation and Value Addition Program that was funded. Actually, it happened 1 and 2, funded by the African Development Bank. Another one that is now being launched is a program for building resilience for food and nutrition security in the Horn of Africa, still financed by the World Bank. Hundreds of millions coming into agricultural programs through the national government. And what does the national government do? Like the CVAP, the Small Scale Irrigation and Value Addition Program, is meant to support small scale irrigation at grassroots level. But this program is being run by the national government. And we are sent to the counties to go and put up boreholes. We sink boreholes, then support the community to develop small scale, use the borehole water to support small scale value addition, irrigation and value addition. This program is being run directly from the national government. Sometimes you would go, you don't know what the county also has its own programs. They're building boreholes. So we have one community, like earlier this year was in Meru. The county has its own program. We're also there. So even the local communities are confused which program is which. So I feel that a lot of money that is going in, but it will end up that this money is not going to create the intended impact. We are talking about a program to build resilience for food and nutrition security in the Horn of Africa. What is it going to achieve? Hundreds of millions go. So if we were in a proper system, then those are monies that should be channeled through where devolution, this devolution thing. Why should there be duplication of responsibility. Why should what role does the Minister of Agriculture have in going to sink a borehole for a small-scale irrigation project directly in the middle of nowhere, somewhere inside the county? So those are some of the things that we have to step up and correct. Finally, there's one thing, even as we talk about food and nutrition security and all these things, we must be able to, and this will cut across all sector, we must begin to support our local enterprises to be able to do some of these things that we are doing. I want to draw an example from the fishing. I come from South Nyanza, and fishing was the traditional economic activity along the lake. Now, fishing has gone to another level. Most of the fish you eat in Nairobi here are farmed fish. Fortunately or unfortunately, maybe not farmed fish from around, but farmed fish from the lake. We know that now there are investors that have come there and they are doing fish farming, large-scale fish farming. What do they call them? Those fish caging in the lake. Those are most of our local farmers have been thrown out of business because we were not able to empower them to be able to invest in it. What is so technical about fish caging that we must get victory farms, and I don't have anything against victory farms, I'm just using it as an example, to come and invest in Lake Victoria. We couldn't put ourselves together and empower local fishermen to be able to invest in fish farming in Lake Victoria. We attended the Homa Bay International Investment Conference earlier this year, and one of the anchor investors that were given an enterprise license to operate within the new special economic zone that was launched in Homa Bay was Victory Farms. This is a foreign farm. What they simply did is to go and invest in fish cages. Now they are supplying fish all over the country. Even here in Nairobi, I buy fish from a Victory Farms outlet in Nairobi West when I want fish. So we look at all that. We simply needed to support also our farmers to be able to invest in such kinds of activities. Then we are able to grow and promote our local enterprises. These people will do the business. Yes, they come to invest, they pay tax, but the profit is repatriated back into their own countries. So we really need to build a system that works for us. For us to be able to achieve food security, we need to large-scale irrigation systems that can support mechanization, mechanized agriculture. I'm yet to hear the Ministry of Agriculture talk or introduce any policy on mechanization and large-scale agriculture. So we will keep being here. We pretend that we are supporting small-scale, but that is subsistence. For us to be able to achieve national food security so that we can have even surplus to export, we must be able to move from small-scale subsistence agriculture to large-scale mechanized agriculture supported by proper irrigation schemes. And I challenge us that these things, we don't want just to end up as being advocates. We want to build a system that is going to help us achieve these things. So I want to challenge us, brothers and sisters, those of us, they are good leaders here. And Bonnie has given this challenge to us here and even to me personally. Let's not be comfortable where we are. This is the time to build and identify and nurture leadership that will take over from this current crop of octogenarian politicians that have held our systems hostage. This is the time to step out. We team together, we work, we mentor, we nurture leadership so that when we get into the next election, we want not only to be career activists where we just advocate for good things. Activism is good. In fact, we will keep advocating. But while that advocacy is going on strongly, we also need people who will step out and take over so that in 2027 or the next time we go for elections, we need to have a house We need to have Lady Justice, prosecuting these good points in Parliament. Rubicona, we need to have people now coming back home to be able to help us. We want Bonnie to come and do this economics, help us with a bit of economics from home after being away from the country for so long. So I want to challenge people. Now there's a lot of organization that is going on. There are a lot of initiatives that are going on behind the scenes, including people who are organizing themselves politically to be able to go. Because if we send 1 or 2 people into parliament, they will be corrupt. They will be overtaken by the system. So the game now is, how do we get people in mass so that we have control of parliament? Parliament is in the hands of people who can help us to be able to put these things into actual practice. So that is the challenge that I leave with us here. Let us, if you are that kind of a person, please don't keep quiet. If you have that conviction, I again realize that many of us have those convictions, but we're just quiet with them until in a forum where we challenge people to come out, and we received a lot of DMs of people of the same mind. And now when we receive them, we direct them to the right place. We team them up with people of like mind, and urge them to craft something that can help us to be able to overhaul that parliament and those county assemblies in 2027. So don't keep quiet. If you feel that there's a conviction in your heart that there's something you can do, either in terms of helping us crafting a strategy or coming out to take active part in the next leadership. So don't keep quiet, reach out, let us talk, let us be able to now move this conversation from what the problem is to what we can do about the problem. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Dr. I think that was a brilliant submission. I just wanted to add to the Galana Kaludu project. It's true, is a glaring example of a missed opportunity in sustainable development. I think instead of transforming Kenya arid lands into a vibrant agricultural hub, it has turned to be a white elephant project and a waste of public resource. Another example is also the Itere Dam water supply, which was to supply water to thousands of residents, that has not even taken off. So I think there is this disconnect. There is the plan on paper, which is the bottom economic up approach, but which is very different on the reality on the ground. Thank you. That's my few additions.
Oh, thank you, Abdi, for that submission, and Dr. Thank you very much as well. Dr. Jackson, please.
Thank you so much, Lady Justice, for giving me this opportunity. Mine would be robustly brief. Now, when I was just getting in, I've actually heard of people discussing our state of political leadership, and that is why I would take it before I come to the real issue in discussion. Are you able to get me?
Yes, we hear you, but you're breaking a little bit, so just go on.
Okay. Now, sorry for that. Now, let me say this, that the biggest challenges or challenge that currently we have in our country is actually the people who are leading us, and this is specifically the representative at the constituency level, members of parliament. And so we have a hashtag that is going on called Dissolve the Parliament. That is where we are facing. And then the other part that we are pushing for is also issues of ID issuance. Once we are done with that, then we can now be in a position to bring in new crop of leaders who can be able to take us forward in implementing some of the best policies that Kenya has developed that is being used outside Kenya in countries like Rwanda. That aside, let me come back to the issue of environment and food security. I happen to have a proper background on public health, nutrition, and of course, that specializations discusses a lot of areas on food and nutrition security. And part of what I wanted to contribute is currently we have got very good policies within the Ministry of Agriculture, but that ministry does not have a proper act that are embedded within the law. And that makes even implementing those policies that we have becoming extremely very difficult. The policy on food production and value chain systems that was actually launched in 2022 is one of the best policies that currently Rwanda is using even to implement agricultural production. And they are next to actually introducing one of the biggest processing, bank processing factory in Rwanda that is meant for production of drugs or manufacture of pharmaceuticals, essential pharmaceuticals. That said aside, I just wanted to let you know that our MPs have failed us because majority of the projects or projects being implemented and fail along the way are actually things that are supposed to be an act of parliament. And that then means that even if they are put in place with proper funding, they don't see the light of the day. And stealing money becomes very easy because there is no proper legislation on how those projects are undertaken and how monitoring and evaluation bit are supposed to be done. I've heard of so many mega projects that we have mentioned there before, the Galana Kulalu, Utere Dam and all that. Those projects, are having worked in those arid areas, understand that there's a breakdown in how we are actually they are actually being implemented, because they start implementing them, but along the way you realize that they flop up because there is no law. Actually, there is no proper legislation on how we are supposed to do carry out agricultural activities in our country. The other bit of it is on agricultural regulations. That is issues of farm chemicals that are supposed to be used in farm. Like right now, we have part of county, I think Meru County, I think it's a village that has so much cases of breast cancer, and that is brought by high levels of use of pesticides and and the chemicals that then people are consuming, and environmentally has a very big effect to human life. I have also been in a position to implement some projects in Turkana focusing on food security, and we were doing hydroponics and permaculture food productions. That is not in the act, because majority of these things, as much as we might be discussing them now, but they actually revolves around legislations. And so it becomes very difficult to even implement some of these projects in the country, because then even the implementing partners, the international implementing partners or donors, will require you, when you are even in need of some funding, will require it to state, legislations that regulate such kind of agricultural production programs. And so it becomes very difficult even for donors or development partners to be in a positions to fully implement such kind of very good initiatives or agricultural programs. And so my parting shot would be that maybe moving forward, we got to focus on, because Kenya has very good policies that currently finds their way outside, and those policies are actually being used by other countries to make their countries better, by other leaders to make their countries better beyond Kenya. And so we simply need not livestock act like the one that we saw was introduced in parliament without proper public participation, or Pang Seed Act that we saw, But rather, one of the questions that I was asking one of the guys is that why do we actually not talking about issues of regulating mechanization, as someone has said, as well as being in a position to regulate chemicals that we use, including fertilizers and spraying chemicals that we use in our farms. Those are very important because they environmentally pose a lot of maybe benefits and as well as threats to human consumptions. The other thing is that if you look at Kenya Bureau of Standards and any other partner that act on agricultural productions and produce, there is no proper standard of measure when it comes to regulations of our food produce, agricultural produce, as well as supply chain and storage, mechanisms. The buck still stop with Parliament to be in a position that someone like me, if I decide to maybe propose, a bill through a member of Parliament, it can see the light of the day and for the interest of many Kenyans, both health-wise and even in terms of economically and even financially. That said, then I'm calling upon all of us that now we need to start making a very proper discussion on why we are losing our agricultural value and agricultural pride that naturally we have been having for a long time. We have been having for a long time. Today, if you move along Nyanza, where probably I happen to come from, and you crisscross our rice production zone, that is Ahero, as well as even in Kisii, and even if you go to Kericho, as well as sugar industries, they are seemingly to be collapsing because now you see Finleys and Kenyans are fighting over the issue of tea productions and all that. If you go to Nyanza, for example, and Western, you will find all the sugar industries are not there. For some reasons, because there was no proper legislations put in place on how to be able to regulate or manage our food production baskets. There also is an issue of maize production. I can tell you for free, this regime might not be very, very ready to implement what we are talking about, except that if we get goodwills in the Parliament, because part of the proposals that they had initially put, even before they came into power, was the issue of banning maize production in our food baskets of Trans Nzoia and Uasin Gishu, and that is something that is in the public limelight. Remember, the gentleman on top of the leadership had already proposed that we start now to bringing on board avocado production than maize production, and that has really affected, because then that means we have to import maize that local citizens, and recently we actually imported some maize that citizens are supposed to use, which should not be the case. So even as we are moving forward, we simply need to focus on different acts or legislations that will ensure we have got not only qualitative, but not only quantitative, but also qualitative aspect of our agricultural productions. Remember, food security has got 4 pillars. Majority of almost 3 pillars are not currently actually available within the realms of our population. We have accessibility, we have availability, affordability, and acceptability. People cannot be able now, especially in those areas that we say are arid or asols, people cannot be able to actually access, the food, and because they are not available in the first place, and so not affordable. And to some extent, we also have to now start thinking which foods are acceptable within our systems, so that we don't pose a lot of medical complications that comes with consuming foods that are not of good standards to our people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joktan, for bringing that submission. I just want to add on the part of avocado production. I read about that sometimes back happening in Kisii, and my greatest concern is avocado is known to interfere with water levels within a community. And a great example is Chile in South America. It's really messed up their water to the point now that, water is one thing that people fight over. And that comes from a result of, Chile has been a major exporter of avocado to the US, to Canada, to all these other countries. So I know that the UK brought this program in Nyanza, and personally, I don't see it as a benefit to the community. It's going to bring greater damage to the people. I see, what's his name? Is he out again? David.
Okay.
David is back.
Okay, I have, Lady Justice, I have two questions for Daktari from our audience before he drops off. And
Abdi, I can't hear you.
I can also hear him.
Go ahead, Abdi. Ask the questions, please. Ephraim, why are you disliking? Just
No,
to give.
it's just a notice to tell him that we can't hear him.
Oh, I see. Thank you. So, Abdi, unfortunately, we can't hear you. Could you please go to David, then Ephraim? David Wakabi?
can you hear me now?
Yes, Abdi, I can hear you.
Okay, there were two questions coming in for Daktari before he goes off, and the one was on how can Kenya better prepare for and mitigate the impacts of climate change on agriculture and food security? That's one from our audience. And the other question was, with the heavy reliance on rain-fed agriculture, how can we diversify our agricultural practice? And the final question is that was coming was, the government has made efforts to improve food security through various initiatives. Do you think there are gaps in these efforts, and how can they be addressed? How can we improve the effectiveness of irrigation schemes, infrastructure projects to reduce the dependency on rain-fed agriculture? What are the solutions you can propose on this? Thank you.
Thanks, Abdi. I'm always very poor in capturing. The first question was on climate change.
Yes.
Just come
Okay.
up. So
Yeah. The first question was in regards. Okay, let me go. The first question was on climate change. Yes. How can Kenya better prepare and mitigate the impact of climate change on agriculture and food security? What role should the local community play in this? That was the question from the
Just one, so that I can be able to answer.
Okay.
The first question, then you'll go to the next. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah. Now, sorry. This is one thing that actually our members of parliament do not let us know. Climate change under COP7 that was held last year, and several summits have been held on climate change, including here in Kenya. Now, I don't know if majority of us knows that we have a funding that is supposed to go to the Ministry of Forestry under climate change, and it is a very big money. It is a very big volume of money. If we had got very good governance system in our country, and where public voices are heard, I would actually see to it, and this is one thing that the CS for Treasury and Economic Planning actually proposed when he was being interviewed, that Kenya do not have to borrow to be able to mitigate climate change. Remember, climate change is a very one of the limiting factors in production of our agricultural produce, because 5.5% of our GDP actually rolls out because of or goes away or just depletes as such because of rainfall and the effect of rainfall. and almost 7.9% of our GDP, again, because of drought, because even livestock die during bad weather, during dry seasons, and even during rainy seasons. We have seen livestock actually die in most part of our country, and during rainy seasons, we have seen even plants and crops being washed away by rain. And if it was in the spirit of good governance, then as Honorable Mbadi was saying, is that we need to know proper utilization. Our countries suffer a deficient of proper utilization and accountability of public resources. The amount of money that is yet to be funded to a Ministry of Forestry, should actually be in a positions to diversify production of our agricultural, enhancing, agricultural systems in our country, because you cannot talk about forestry and you cannot talk about agriculture when you don't talk about forestry. Yeah, so we need funds, and that fund is available because Kenya is just about to receive climate change fund. That's a lot of billions of money to be in a positions to regulate or regulate climate change in our country. What was the next question?
Oh, Dr. Jackson, could we let others also chime in as well? I know this is Ruby's area of expertise as well. So, Ruby, could you add on to that? And then we can go to the next question. And then Linda.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Lady Justice, for that. I'm very passionate about this because it's something that I think we have to be careful when we're talking about climate change or sustainability development. Because to me, I think climate change is a hoax. It's basically something that we cannot mitigate because of what the world is doing. So, for example, if we want to mitigate the climate change in Africa, we are being told to cut things, to do this, to do that, whereby in the Western countries, they will be able to pollute. So climate change is basically, to me, it's a wicked problem, whereby we will be able to solve the situation in one end by creating another problem. It's creating problem in one hand and solving problem in another. So it's just a swapping of problems. And Africa is being pushed into this because basically there's an interest of huge corporations. So basically the corporations, for them, they have the interest of like, for example, if you look at the GMO food and if you look at other things that are happening. And some people might not agree with me when I say the climate change. For example, look, there are people, like, for example, countries like Dubai are making rain. And the chemicals they use to make this rain, the world is letting them do it, is affecting people. It's not only affecting Dubai, it's affecting people in Africa, it's affecting people in Asia, it's affecting the world. What are we going to do about that? And then another sham is here that we do carbon credits to mitigate climate change. When you do carbon credits to mitigate climate change, basically you're buying, and Chicago has one of the biggest carbon trade center. It's like the US stock exchange. It's a stock exchange for carbon trade. And people basically trade air. They come up with this solution to mitigate. But in real sense, it does not mitigate anything. It is still, to me, it is the world was set up to work. We can mitigate it, but it was set up to be what it is. Life is changing, things are changing, and there's always going to be a change. But if we are being pushed to do things based on climate change, I think we're going to burn. Because as a country that's still developing, we are being forced into buying into policies that does not serve us, but is serving the West and is serving corporations. And corporations know very well that the moment you refuse to take action on climate change, you're being branded. You're being branded as, you're either poor, you're being branded as uneducated, you're being branded as, like, literally the world is at you. And it's the same thing. I mean, might be an extreme example with what we're seeing happening with the LGBT community. It's like the moment you oppose that, then you are anti something, that's not basic. So we need to trend very carefully when we think about climate change and sustainable development. Another thing is like Africa, for example, in Kenya, for me, we have everything we need. We don't need all these GMOs. All we need is trained farmers. We have everything. We have the climate and we have water. We can be able to train our farmers and give them the food to yield. We get our meat here, we get our grains there, we get our fish there. From each county, there's something that we can get. But how are we trained? We have to reform our education system. We have to train people how to take care of the community. For example, everybody is being told that, you can just go to school and you're going to get a job. Being a farmer is not something that's celebrated. It's starting to be right now because people are realizing that food is really important. I think so. We have to really trend carefully. And right now, anytime you hear the government is talking, all they're talking about is sustainable development without really defining that term. And sustainable development simply means that we meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the needs of the future generation. But this is actually turning to be opposite. We are compromising the need of and hindering the need of the present generation and further hindering the need of the future generation by the policies that are being implemented because they're not sustainable. If you look at it and it looks good on paper, but if to apply it on the ground, it's not going to stick. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruby. Linda, please chime in.
I think somebody mentioned about Kenya is about to receive funds. I think my question is from where, and I'll kind of give time if you could add brief scoop to kind of chime his comment on agriculture because he's well versed on that topic. I'll kind of leave that space for him.
Thank you, Linda.
Lady, it's also I think Abdi asked so many questions, so maybe they can also be answered.
Definitely. The questions are coming from the comment. Abdi, could you read the second one? Then we can have a brief scoop and Dr. Jackson answering.
So this is asking on the government has made efforts to improve food security through various initiatives. What do you think are the main gaps in these efforts? How can they be addressed? How can we improve effectiveness of irrigation schemes, infrastructure projects to reduce dependency on rain-fed agriculture? And then I will say the final question, which is what are examples of successful smart agriculture practices that can be scaled up in Kenya? How can technology and innovation be made more accessible to small-scale farmers to improve production and sustainability? Thank you.
Dr. Jackson, did you get that? Or scoop? Brief scoop, go ahead.
Thank you. Sure, I did. What can be done to mitigate for climate, for rain-fed agriculture? We don't need to mitigate for rain-fed agriculture. We need to use, in Kenya, for example, we have every single year, we have floods, and every single year we have drought. We just need to collect the rainwater, make sure that people are not drowning, by building dams, and we don't have to build, we don't have to spend billions of dollars. Philip, if you don't mind, you're unmuted. And it doesn't have to be supremely expensive dams, right? They can be done using local materials, local methods, because part of the problem with our agriculture is that the agriculture bills that are being passed, they're coming down directly from Washington. There's this, to Ruby's point, there's the climate change agenda that involves trading on Wall Street. How does trading on Wall Street, how does trading carbon credits exactly mitigate for rainfall? So it's creating wealth on Wall Street, how does that actually then lead to us solving our problems in Northeastern or Northwestern, or and apparently these days it's not just Northeastern and Northwestern, it's as far down as Meru County, as far as Kiambu County, as far as and of course Loitoktok and those areas in Narok, Kajiado County and Narok County. There is a big issue that we Kenyans are not facing when we address issues piecemeal. It's not about just sort of changing a policy here or a policy there or better implementing this particular policy document. It is about us needing to stand up as a nation and agree, are we going to continue trying to sort of improve our country, our agriculture? Specifically today, it's about agriculture and environment. Are we going to continue to try and solve the issues of colonialism and imperialism with incremental sort of discussions and policy papers and incrementalism here and there? Or are we going to just stand up and put an end to imperialism? What do I mean by that? I'll be very specific. When we have bills being passed to benefit Syngenta and Bayer Crop Science that say that Kenyans cannot exchange seeds between themselves, then what we are doing is we are allowing our economy, our food security to be colonized, to be taken from us, the control of that to be taken from us. And it's not just the control, but the impact is then that, in fact, not only do we not produce enough sufficient food for ourselves, but farmers are left with massive debt. So I don't just fight or push back against the imperialist policies that we are subject to sort of as a novelty or as a surface level issue. It is an issue that has a real impact. We have to decide as a country, are we going to push back against, we keep being told that the only system that works is this American system where we are subject to, so for example, I was looking to Galana Kulalu. We were lent $5 billion, I believe, 5 billion shillings, Kenya shillings. That's 50 million shillings from outside donors, I believe the World Bank or the IMF, one of the Bretton Woods institutions. Let me tell you something. 5 billion shillings, while it sounds like a lot of money, is actually not sufficient money to build a dam. That's $50 million. You cannot build a dam for $50 million or of that magnitude, and that is supposed to do the things that we were being told Galana Kulalu would do. And this is what the World Bank specializes in. They specialize in funding white elephants. So the theft, the internal theft notwithstanding, the corruption whereby the money ended up not even doing anything, notwithstanding, yes, that is also an issue. But let me tell you something, the biggest chunk of that money never actually even made it to the country because, again, that's what the World Bank, that's what the Bretton Woods institutions do, the IMF and the World Bank. They fund white elephants, they turn around and then tell you, the white elephant is not actually taking off, and so we are not going to release the money until you prove that this, that, or the other is happening. And so they actually create an environment that ensures the corruption that we then are left ourselves fighting each other over, whereas 70% of the funds stayed in the United States anyway. Then the little money that actually came into the country, when you read about it, there were Israeli firms here, an Israeli firm this, an Israeli firm that. All that money went to foreign corporations for all these deals because that's what the IMF and the World Bank do. They give you loan, quote unquote, give you loans, and then they turn around and force you to sign deals where you have to hire their experts, you have to make deals with Western corporations. So none of these things are going to solve our problems. What we have to do is we have to invest in local methods, local seed, local systems, go back to our roots. We fed ourselves for millennia. We fed ourselves long before the colonizers came. Yes, it's a different environment. Yes, there's a bigger population, but with that bigger population, there are more farmers as well. And the land is nowhere near exhausted. We still have plenty of land. Kenya is a country the size of France. France has a population close to 100 million. We are only 54 million. We can feed ourselves. We have sufficient rainfall every single year. We just need to find ways, creative ways of collecting the rain to ensure that people are not drowning when we have floods. And then when we have drought, we use that rainwater. We have to go back to our traditional methods of farming that worked for millennia. We have to go back to using our traditional seeds, our small seeds, our native seed, many of which are already resilient to the climate that we are in. We have food all year round. We really do not need to be. And by the way, and even despite the current situation where there is food shortages and hunger in some parts of the country, it is still, even in this current situation, we still produce enough food to feed all of Kenya. It simply doesn't make it to everyone that needs it. So are we going to continue trying a system, an economic system that doesn't work for us? Or are we going to allow ourselves to, first of all, fend off colonialism and imperialism and the imposing of bills and policies from outside? Or are we going to turn around and say, we know how to do this? We have to do some investments in infrastructure to ensure that food can get to where people need it right across the country. And then we have to turn around and also decide upon an economic system that actually works for us, something that is built and based on Ubuntu, not this Western Wall Street based economic system that only benefits the few and ensures that everything that we earn, our labor, our earnings, the work of our hands, essentially only goes to build Wall Street banks and profits for Wall Street investors. It is madness to continue doing what we are doing. And so, as important as the Gen Z movement was and the issues that we raised are, and as important as much as the leadership is failing and is falling short. In reality, that leadership, the primary failure of our leadership is to stand up for us against Wall Street, against the colonizer, against the United States, against the EU, and by the way, against Eastern colonizers too, against China and the Middle East. We have to start building a Kenya that is based on Kenyan tradition, Kenyan policies, homegrown policies and solutions. We need to stop looking outside for solutions. Let me yield there because I've gone on for quite a bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brief, for that submission. Ephraim, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. You probably know each other and you don't know me. I will just make a quick reference. I'm from Eritrea and I've had interest in Kenya for quite some time, investing in solar business. That's where my connection to Kenya is. I've been visiting your rooms for a bit. So one thing I wanted to say previously was covered. That's why I dropped my hand. But I agree with the context where you are saying one of the important factors for development, or even the topic environment and food security, is obviously good governance, and I don't think I don't think we doubt that. But for example, at some point I had invested in Somaliland, partly in agriculture and in solar energy. One thing I noticed was in Somaliland, when we were getting, for example, quality seeds or even other agricultural products, it was a commercial farming we are talking about. I'm based in Sweden, by the way. we were getting it from Dubai, while Kenya is the next door neighbor. So good governance would probably have brought a better regional integration where the infrastructure is good enough so that Kenya would make money out of it. But on the second topic, where I think it's Queen Ruby Kwan, I say Queen and Kings. I'm used to the Eritrean rooms where we call each other that way. I do not think the notion where we think climate-friendly investments or climate smart investments would deter developments. Especially in the African context, it might be actually otherwise. If because we would be jumping from the infrastructures that have been built for non-climate friendly investments, be it production, be it solar energy, be it any other material, would be jumping over to, for example, solar energy or electric car facilities and such, would be jumping one state, and it might actually give us an opportunity to be to have a leading role, because the other countries have to redevelop their infrastructures or remove the old structures that were not considered climate friendly. So it can. I still believe that a good balance of development can still be achieved through climate smart methods, and Africa or our region, in especially, can play a vital role in that. Climate is not just energy; it can be a better use of the land with less chemicals, with more organic fertilizers, or with better seeding systems. And the second thing I wanted to bring about was, it was mentioned that we should be able to move from small scale agriculture to commercial agriculture. Yes, that's true, definitely. But in our context, my reading of Kenya might not be at your levels, obviously, because you are there. But one prerequisite for that is a small scale farmer is able to find either investment to go big scale, or he or she is able to find another type of employment, which brings us to industrialization, so that commercial farmers or commercial investors can use a product in a more efficient way, where food is not just produced there for local consumption, but also for export to other countries. Just like I mentioned, a seed can be exported with a very little investment and with a better policy making from Kenya to Somaliland than bringing it from Dubai, which we were doing actually, and many other things. Obviously, Kenya is a more sophisticated land than Somaliland is, so and Somaliland was importing actually from tomato to cars and machineries. And the land doesn't basically produce anything. It's a very import-based economy. And to conclude, what I would say is, because you have a better country than my country, Eritrea, in terms of having at least a better platform for democratic governance. And we can say a lot about democracy, but I'm talking about democracy which is applicable in our context. I mean, contextual democracy. It doesn't have to be Swedish democracy or US democracy, or whatever the case may be. So what would be the role of the Kenyan diaspora? And I believe most of you are in diaspora. What would be your role allowing this to transition from a dependent economy towards having the diaspora can itself be an NGO in its own country? If organized in a better way, diaspora itself can be assisting, be it in policy making or be it connecting to the rest of the world. For example, you just mentioned avocado. Avocado needs a lot of water, and it affects a lot of the level of water, which is true. But avocado is also gold in the world market. So how can it be linked so that it has the required quality to be imported to Sweden instead of avocado being imported from Chile to Sweden, for example? We do have we are very blessed in water levels, actually. It's just that we are not using them to the level that's required. So the diaspora should probably play a much better role, having seen the developments of other countries, because the other countries realized economy is democracy or good governance is a main factor to have a developing economy in many cases, not always. So that's pretty much about it. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you
May
very much. Yeah.
may I respond to Efren before it get mixed up?
Go ahead, Ruby.
Okay, so Efren, you brought like a good point in terms that we have to use technologies to mitigate the climate change. However, if we what I agree with you, like totally, we have to use methods to mitigate climate change and to provide solution to the issue of climate change. However, my problem comes in when the corporation are using this to actually benefit from places like Africa, for example. So in Congo, like okay, the introduction, one of the best ways to mitigate climate change has been introduction of electric cars. And now look what's happening in Congo. We are using the cobalt to create electric cars that is actually not benefiting Congolese. It's actually creating a lot of problem. A lot of Congolese are being killed in Congo. This is not happening. Like it's not helping Africa. And now I heard that recently the cobalt is found in Kenya too. So while we're digging this cobalt, we are digging holes. And for example, and these cobalts also have chemicals that they release in the air. That's probably in the future when the research is done, we're probably going to be like, oh, this is actually not good for our planet. Another thing also is adopting the situation of adopting the forest to do carbon trading. A lot of countries, like for example, if you look at the UAE, they recently went and they're adopting forest all over African countries and mitigating. They're coming in with a climate change agenda and sustainability agenda to mitigate climate change. But in reality, what they're doing, they're taking land. In order to adopt the forest, you have to first of all own that land in order for you to sell that carbon credit. So in the end, we might end up, the whole of Africa might end up not having a land at all. We're just going to be there, sitting there, but you don't own it. They're going to be able to dictate what we do, what we eat, how we move, everything. So that is, my problem is being the imperialists are using this not on our benefit, but for their benefit. And lastly, I just wanted to also talk about the avocado. We know the avocado is not good for the forest. However, the President Ruto is advocating for people to plant cotton. Cotton is similarly toxic to the land and to the water, and it produces a lot of toxicity to the land that is not benefiting the environment anyway. So that's what I was saying about this environment thing. It's not to serve us, the developing countries, but to serve the Westerners. And that's where the problem comes in. If you go to places for the funding, now let's look for the funding. If you look at how the funding is being done, it's coming to African Bank and it's coming, and as well explained, that most of the money stays in New York and it doesn't trickle down to us. We will see that on paper, but in reality, we don't see that money. It will be held, a quarter of it, and also conditions are imposed on that. And African Bank, for example, who are the biggest shares? It's the Western countries. If you look at the meeting that's taking place in African Bank, you laugh because most of the people sitting there are Westerners. And the same with ECOWAS, the West African one. And that's why the Traore, the Gen Z president, just decided to leave ECOWAS because they cannot call the shots. It's totally overtaken by the Western countries. If you look at the African Union, who are the biggest shares of African Union? It's not us. It's not Africa. It's the Western countries. They are funding it and they're dictating whatever they're going to do. I think we have to follow where the money goes. Anytime you follow the money, you kind of have a clear perspective of what's going on. And we need to stand strong. We need to stand strong. And one of the reasons we can advocate, we can say this is not our tradition. It doesn't fit us. It doesn't fit our lifestyle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
May I respond to Ephraim, please?
Please go ahead, Linda. Thank you.
Okay, Ephraim, I know you mentioned about the diaspora involvement, but I just wanted to bring it to the table that one of the challenges we've had is actually collaborating with the Kenya government to propel all the ideas. Brief Scoop is kind of one of the counterparts where we worked with on the diaspora views document, where the document was submitted to the president. However, shortly after, I guess, the government started implementing projects, what they did was now to start shipping our people back, abroad, as they call it, where they're exporting people from Kenya to work abroad. While for us, our goal was to ensure that we are protecting our country and our investments as well, and also just kind of bringing change in a positive way. So, just to respond to you, we've been trying. However, the fact that we've been frustrated, what we've resorted to do now is to work as our own individuals, where some of us, like me, I'm a large-scale farmer. I grow avocados where I come from, and I'm just doing my thing and encouraging the rest of the diaspora to also jump onto projects and tap into the resources via the taxpayer dollars that we have allocated within foreign investments and the grants that are available. So in as much as we are trying to ensure that our country is protected, we can only do so much. So most people are resorting to just doing their own projects and running with it. We have a lot of money here that many, that has been allocated for foreign investments, but we cannot start saying that we're not going to utilize that money because that is part of our taxpayer money. So if we don't utilize it, guess what's going to happen? African Americans will tap into those grants and they'll come and have onion farms in Kenya, which, at the end of the day, it doesn't help our people because we continue to be underpaid, back home when we look at things from our perspective. That's all I have.
Thank you. Lady Justice, also to let you know we are on the top of the hour. Probably we can do also some final submissions. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you very much. I see Rosemary's hand was up. We have a few people who've not submitted and they've been in the room for quite some time. Could you just give them an opportunity? So Rosemary, 3 minutes, Nothing Kenya, 3 minutes, and then David Wakabi, 3 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Lady Justice. It's always a pleasure to be on the same space with you. I really enjoyed myself the other day. And let me call you out and say that wacha nitangaze kuwa you've written, you have some nuggets of information that we need out there. You've written wonderful books and you need to put them on the space so that some of us can access and read them. That's point number one. Huyu ni shangazi, anasema. That is one. Two, Hillary, thank you again for this space, State of the Nation, Environment and Food Security. I had no intention of speaking today. I just wanted to listen in and also soak myself with the information and experience coming in from all speakers, from Bonnie, who is your Boniface Mwangi, lakini ni Bonnie mwingine, from Ruby. You've given really wonderful formation. My brother, Brief Scoop, as always, when it comes to food security, you're not kuachia. I pack it there and I leave you to deal with it because you have done so much research. You are so heavily invested on our behalf. Abdi, I think we are following each other, and I just love, how you come onto the space and you're reading comments and doing what you're doing. I think kitu ambacho nasema ni kwamba All of us, hands on deck, we play a role. Are we going to stand on the fence? I have always said, Hillary and I, when we were doing these things, since at the time of the campaign, never stand on the fence, or you are also part of the problem. Get yourself immersed into something. Whether you are going to be doing demonstrations in Kenya, and why are you doing those demonstrations in Kenya, is because you're unhappy about an issue. Ikiwa utasimama kwenye fence, then hiyo ni shauri yako. Don't start blaming anybody when bad leaders are elected. And of course, that brings up the issue of civic education that has been talked about over and over and over. I had hoped that, Daktari is still here. Daktari, I wanted to challenge you. You brought up something very close to my heart. Na ukasema mambo ya Victory Farms wanafanya fish caging and they've cut out the local what have you. Let me encourage you. Don't be lazy. Get your relatives together into a circle. Invest hata kama ni kama $1,000. Waanze fish cages. We are doing it in, I'm also from Lake Victoria, close by there. We are doing fish cages. And there's a huge consumption and there's huge need for fish. Hata kina brief school siku hizi Wakikuyu wanakula samaki. Unajua, sisi, this is something we, literally our snack was fish. But, joking there, but really, this is just something that needs to be promoted. All I'm saying is that there's a huge demand for fish all over the country and external. I know a lady here in the US, actually, I think she imports her fish either from China, ama from the Chinese, ama kitu kama hicho. I've not delved into going into details, but that's what I had. All I'm saying ni kwamba kuna biashara. Wacha Victory Farms wafanye what they are doing in around Lake Victoria, but also you and I, tushike mkono maantis wetu, our relatives who've been doing fishing for the longest time, and they are now being cut out. Particularly, I'm told the Kenyan waters, or part of the Lake Victoria, maji mingi iko Uganda and elsewhere. But the little that we have has been saturated. Samaki zote zimekwisha. Now you only get Nile perch and what have you, which is not as tasty. So I'm just saying in terms of food security, that is one area. Kitu cha pili, the question I wanted, so that is a challenge I'm giving to Daktari and to each one of you. Hata wewe Abdi, sijui unatoka wapi kule Kenya, hata kama ni northeastern ama northwestern ama north wherever, shikana na watu kidogo, muanze fish cages. Iko biashara hapo, nawaambia. The other thing, brief scoop, I wanted to find out, Bretton Woods institutions. How can we ever do away with them? Cut them out. I am one of the people that have said when Yoweri Museveni came to power, he never went to the Bretton Woods institutions to borrow money. Yeye alikwenda China, alikwenda to certain countries producing something, akasema mimi nitawapatia maharage, and in exchange of my foodstuff, beans, because Uganda has wonderful soil. And why do I say this? I know it very well and you know it very well, but I border with them. So that soil is just superb. So all I'm saying is that how can we do away with IMF? We are servicing a debt we never received, but also how can we do away with it? Do we have serious leadership that can even go and negotiate with the Paris Club, all these people, so that some of our debts are written off because we never received them in the first place? Ama tugome tu tusilipe. So let me yield my mic. Ruby, you gave very good information on carbon credits. I need to understand it a little bit better because I think that is something that is being talked around as so important. This, that, nini, mambo ya carbon credits. And if you don't go green, I have nothing against going green, but must it be pushed down our throats in Africa when actually the people emitting greenhouses, gases, na nini, it's other countries? You know, let us hold them. Let us hold the US, some of these big countries that are emitting some of these gases. Wow, they are the biggest culprits. So let me yield my mic here by saying thank you. This is wonderful. I can see my good friend here, Linda Stewart, Motomoto Kitchen, doing a wonderful job na machakula zake. Some of us have also ordered samosa, chapati, nini, all that. So, you know, we need to support each other. Thank you. Oh, one last thing that I wanted to also give out to Daktari and to everybody else, funding. I said ukisaidia relatives even $1,000 ama kitu kama hicho, kama huna hiyo pesa, listen, there's this organization inaitwa WIDU Africa. We do. They march. If you're in Europe, if you're located in Europe currently, it's doing rounds in Europe, started by the German government. You have a relative or a friend in one of these European countries, na kuna biashara inaendelea Africa, particularly Kenya. All they need to do is apply, Google, apply, assuming you unataka your business is $1,000, what we will do, we'll give you 2 times that, so you have $3,000 kufanya biashara. There you have it. Thank you.
Asante sana, Auntie Rose. You had to do it, right? Anyway, thank you very much once again. Nothing KE, alafu what David Wakabi, please. 3 minutes each. Nothing KE? Key nothing or nothing KE. KE nothing. It's time to offer ourselves. Sometimes people are on this side and they don't know the names they're using. Or David, could you please go ahead as we wait for nothing?
Okay, can you hear me, Lady Justice?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think I had a trouble with the internet, but I'm glad I'm back. Thank you so much, Hillary and Lady Justice, for hosting the space. And I'd like to thank also Ruby for having mentioned, I think I agree with almost everything that she stated earlier. And I would like to say something in regards of the current government all over the world. What I would like to provide information or even enlighten every one of us is that if we are just sitting down and waiting for the government to solve all of our problems, I think most of our problems are to make decisions and being we had
We are losing you. Oh, David, it's not a
terms
good
of
day for
she
you.
got a chance to play maize.
Paula, David, excuse me, David.
Can you
David, ngoja kidogo. We
hear?
can hear you, but you're breaking a lot. So here's what you can do. How about you submit your information, send it to me on message, or just put it on the comments and we'll add it because you're really breaking up. Is that fair? Yes, please. I think that would be fair for everybody.
Okay.
David? Yeah, because
Yeah.
hata saizi nikakusikia. Pole sana, pole.
Okay.
And thank you for being very consistent in the group. Nothing KE, going 1, going 2, 3. Brief scoop, I think it's your opportunity.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to a couple of things that have been brought up and also asked. So, for example, the issue that I have, even regardless of what side you stand on with regard to the environmental question, whether climate change is a hoax or not, or whether climate change is real, regardless of where you stand, in that discussion, what we can all agree on is that the mitigation efforts that are happening have absolutely nothing to do with Africa. So, for example, as Ruby pointed out, electric cars. How is making electric cars good for Africa? So, while even if you were to agree that electric vehicles might be good for the environment, which, by the way, it is now proven they are not, because the batteries are extremely toxic. You cannot get rid of them, and once they're used up, there's we are going to be facing another environmental catastrophe of excess batteries that are extremely, extremely toxic. So, but even if you were to agree that maybe there's a way we can, even if we were to figure it out, at this particular point in time, how are EV vehicles good for the Congo? They are not. Same thing with avocado farming for export. We can grow all the avocado we need for us, for our own consumption here in Kenya or in Africa. But why do we need to be, we do not need to be producing avocados to export to Sweden. With all due respect, Ephraim, I'm sorry, you'll have to still eat your avocados from Chile, or to China or the United States, in all seriousness. We don't need to, because what we need to do in order to solve our problems as Africans is to start actually solving the problems that we have. We cannot have hunger in our own countries and yet be farming avocados for export, which consume, as many people have said in here, so much water. They're actually really terrible for the environment. If done en masse, if we are trying to do it to satisfy the massive American appetite or European appetite, we're going to destroy our lands for the food that we need to be growing for ourselves. So we have to put Africa first. We have to put Kenya first in all the solutions that we are coming up with. And same thing with cotton, as somebody else pointed out. African Development Bank, by the way, is the World Bank. It's not just that the shareholders are Westerners. It is actually a branch of the World Bank. And by the way, the Afrexim Bank is a branch of a Chinese bank. I forget which one in China. I should have looked it up. There was a suggestion about the participation of diaspora. The Ethiopian diaspora contributed $5 billion to build the Grand Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia. They did not have to borrow a penny. But compare that with $50 million given to us Kenyans as a loan to build our dam project. The Ethiopians contributed $5 billion. We were given $50 million for a white elephant that only leads to the issues that we now see, and then leaves us owing money. And by the way, by the time all of that was done, with all the court cases and litigation and everything that happened after that, it ended up being that dam wasted over close to $140 million. And Rosemary asked a really important question. What do we do about Bretton Woods? What we can do is what, as you point out, Uganda did. We have accepted this paradigm where we say we have accepted as factual that colored paper money, what they give us from the United States, colored paper, because that's all it is. The US dollar is colored paper backed by, and I'm not being facetious when I say this, it's backed by nothing but a printer. So we have accepted this paradigm that the US dollar is worth what they say that it is. But in reality, is it? How do we exchange coltan, gold, diamonds, oil for colored paper? How about we turn around and say, no, we don't need your colored paper. What we need is actual materials that we can use, practical things that we can use in exchange for our materials, like for like. And eventually, we need to go even further and get off the international currency exchange protocols, because currently, the United States dollar is, the USD is the international currency, essentially that's what we all use because all commodities are sold in US dollars. But eventually, at some point, we need to come up with regional currencies. For example, the East African community, we keep talking about a single currency. We should have a single currency in the East African community backed by our resources. And then the next thing we have to do is eventually, we need to start pricing. Not eventually, really. There should be a revolution. We should do it much sooner. We've seen the Burkinabe, the Malians, the Nigerian actually do that without waiting for decades through international litigation and court cases and what have you to do this. They've turned around and they've said Burkina Faso now is going to be using their gold to back their currency. We can do these things. We can do these things in short order. We don't have to do them over 20 years. We don't have to do them incrementally. But we need our own currency backed by our own resources, our own natural resources. And in the meantime, until we have that, we should be exchanging. We should be battering. We shouldn't be accepting loans in dollars. It's actually completely useless. And then what the United States turns around and does is willy-nilly, they can just opt to devalue your currency. So whatever payments you're making double overnight. And all of this is something that they actually do arbitrarily. We accept that there's a rhyme and the reason for why they do these things. Actually, in effect, there isn't one. Show me somebody who gives you the rhyme or reason why they are able to do these things. Because if there was a rhyme or reason, when the United States is suffering from inflation, we in Kenya should not be. In fact, what should happen, and the Kenyan shilling should not be declining against the dollar. But what happens is that whenever the United States is
brief. We have 5 minutes to go. We have 5 minutes to go. So if you can land, it'll be better. Lady Justice, when Scoop is done, let us wind up. Thank you.
Sawa. I'll just wind up to say that if there was a rhyme or reason, when the US when the US economy is suffering, the Kenya shilling should not be declining, the Kenya shilling should be strengthening. But what actually ends up happening is that because we all use the US dollar, what happens is that when the US economy is suffering, then what they're able to do is they're able to export their inflation to all the rest of us, which is why there's a global inflation that's causing a global recession right now. Instead of the Americans suffering, everybody else who uses the dollar suffers because what they do is they can print unlimited amounts of cash. I'm going to yield there in the interest of time. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to present my thoughts on this very important subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to hear from our guests today, Ruby and Daktari, for your closing remarks. And please, thank you.
Okay, I can go. I just want to thank everybody. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you, Lady Justice, and everybody here that have come to tune in. You've really taken your time because you care. And as much, I can tell you, I used to be laid back, but I really felt like I used to say I'm not interested in politics until I realized that actually politics is going into my life. It's really penetrating. So I hope that I will continue to take a stand, whichever little stand that each one of us can take. It makes an impact, spreading words over there, following each other, and always reposting and to reach as wide masses as possible. And another thing I just want to say that we have to know that as Africans, we're really strong. And this is something that people, Europeans know about. We don't know our strength, but they know our strength. And the fear is there that if we rise, it's a threat to them. So what is the policy? The policy is always to keep us down as much as possible. There's a scientific evidence that shows that us Africans have like 12 genetic strides, where all of the rest have 6. And when it's come to melanin as well, we have so much. So we should always think ourselves as higher and not lower. And that's going to help us to stand on our own and not always thinking that we have to beg in order for us to survive, in order for us to stand. And also when it comes to electing our leaders, let's always look at the history of our leaders, because most of our leaders get compromised when they have some kind of case that is affecting them. For example, our president right now, he cannot back down. Like, he's taken hostage. I believe he's really taken hostage. He knows that all these policies are not working. They're not good. It's not going to serve us. But he's been taken hostage, and they can't turn back, and they will always dangle the ICC to him. If it dare, try not to do whatever that it takes. And let's always keep an eye. Whenever you see Blinken come in Kenya, please put your eyes wide open. It's just somebody who's coming to put a stamp on whatever he's doing. Like, he came after the Gen Z protest. It's like, okay, he's here in Kenya, and not, but in actual sense, they're not actually. They're just coming to tell maybe President, we don't care. You signed a deal, and you have to abide by it. We don't care. So now you see people like Mbadi are elected there, and they are bringing all these policies back. So we really have to choose the leaders wisely, and see leaders who have clean record and to take positions of power. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Hillary, for bringing this topic. It's indeed food, and food security is my passion. I love food. I love to cook. I love to eat, and I don't like eating food that's not good for me. The other day, I was making fun of my daughter, telling her that I don't think she can run the way the Gen Zs in Kenya run and active, because she's been eating all this GMO since she was born. The Gen Zs in Kenya are very strong. You see, like, people going on the streets. I don't think the kids born here can do that. So let's maintain our food and make sure that we eat good. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ruby. Daktari, your turn.
Oh, thank you, Lady Justice. Thank you, Hillary, and indeed all the speakers and listeners that made it for the space. I have been enlightened quite well. I have learnt a lot from the submissions of the people who've gone before me, who've spoken alongside me. And it is clear, dear ladies and gentlemen, that we have a great task ahead of us. This revolution, to me, was a moment of awakening, so that those of us like myself and Ruby, who have been comfortable in our spaces, could arise and liberate our country. It has been said, and we know, and we all agree, that we need economic liberation. We need to realize the true fruits of independence. I usually tell my students in class that I think what we obtained was internal self-rule. But then, after obtaining internal self-rule, there was another independence that they lied to us that we received, but we didn't receive it. I think all they gave us was internal self-rule, but they gave us that now you have a black president, but who is a puppet of the West. And it has happened for all this. It's now coming clearly to us. People have told us what's happening in the system, including we had a nice discussion here about Jimmy Wanjigi last time. People who have been behind the machinations in the system now coming out to tell us, hey, guys, this is what takes place behind the scenes. Beware. So what have we to do? It behoves us as the elite of this country to come together to educate and enlighten the rest of the population, and above all, not only to call for good leadership and advocate, but we, as I said earlier, we now want to go beyond advocating to actually build a critical mass of people, young people, people of integrity, people across all ages who can stand by a clear record of their past, people of competence who can go in there and take control of the happenings in this country and help us to liberate. Otherwise, if we don't do anything at this moment, we are not going. It's not going to be easy for us in the future. Yeah, before we start also breeding a generation of GMO kids who will find it very difficult to fight for themselves in the future, let us make use of the energy of the current youth who can still stand up against injustices in the society, so that we can nurture this movement and ultimately convert it into real change in this country. Thank you so much. I look forward to engaging with you more in upcoming discussions. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyonyango. Just wanna appreciate each and every one of us for being here today. It's a Sunday evening or Sunday morning, wherever you are, or daytime, but you took the time. Hillary, thank you for always putting together the space. We meet again next week with another topic. Please follow Hillary so that you are in the know of when he's hosting another space. Abdi, thank you for helping today. Ruby, thank you for your knowledge and expertise. Dr. Ari as well. Brief Scoop, Linda Stewart. Mama Rosemary, thank you very much. All the speakers, Nairobi Bad, Northern KE, Shaban. I'm trying not to be, I'm trying to be inclusive. So, kila mtu, santeni sana. Thank you for your love for Kenya. Thank you for always standing up. Thank you for doing the little that you can. Every little bit that we do together, it makes a big difference. Asanteni sana. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much, Lady Justice, and thank you so much, everybody. Have a blessed evening, a blessed day, wherever you are. Let us meet as soon as possible. Maybe tomorrow we have a sport. We are talking with Murkomen to come for issue of sports, and we really appreciate your time always. Keep networking always, and God bless each and everyone. Till we see you again. Bye.